Chapter 1873. What are you waiting for? Do you really want this refugee to defeat us one by one? Xian Tian was shocked and angry. At this moment, he couldn't care less about his reputation. While he was asking the other young great shamans for help, Xian Tian also roared angrily. His body shook, and he turned into a huge golden giant. One of the giant's palms condensed a divine arrow, while the other hand held a divine bow tightly. At the same time, there were countless arrows whistling around Xian Tian. A total of 20,000 sharp arrows condensed by sorcery seemed to be piercing through Yi Fei's body, while another seemed to be piercing through Yi Fei's divine treasure. In addition to the golden giant that Xian Tian had transformed into, and the light of the divine arrow that was about to be released in his hand, this person had actually released 4 arrow sorcery in one breath. Ordinary martial gods wouldn't be able to withstand such a terrifying sorcery attack, unless they were martial gods who could also control multiple primordial celestial skills. After seeing Xian Tian transform, the other young great shamans recovered from their shock. Although Yi Fei's 6 Dao 7 techniques and 7 techniques had filled them with shock and fear, they weren't alone. But in the end, they were not fighting alone. There were 8 of them, surrounding Yi Fei in the middle. Kill him! If we want to win and marry the god of heaven, the sorcerer Shang Jiu is our biggest obstacle. Kill my children, attack, bite him to death. Buzz. Dark clouds suddenly appeared above the golden arena. Those weren't real clouds, but endless voodoo insects that rushed out from the void, devouring and engulfing everything. Even Yi Fei's psychic energy and the psychic energy arrows that filled the sky were targets of their devouring. When the voodoo insects formed a dark cloud and engulfed the mind energy crazily, the entire arena was filled with green fog. It was a voodoo curse released by a young great shaman. In the rolling poisonous fog, ghostly howls could be heard. Countless people were killed by this young great shaman and turned into ghosts. Wailing ghosts rushed out of the poisonous fog. However, before these ghosts rushed to Yi Fei's side, a few young great shamans suddenly joined forces and communicated with the mind bridge, opening the real netherworld. It was a world of the dead. It was filled with pain, bones, and negative energy. When this energy poured into the arena, the entire golden arena was tainted with a boundless aura of death. A terrifying river of blood transformed into a torrential river, suddenly submerging the entire golden arena. Blood puppet, help me kill the enemy! A young man whose battle prowess was on par with Xian Tian was currently standing on the river of blood, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. Every time he spat out a mouthful of blood, a blood puppet would rush out from the river of blood. It raised its sinister blood saber and mercilessly slashed down at Yi Fei. Just as Yi Fei was astonished by the strange attacks of these magi, another loud roar entered his ears. Looking back, Yi Fei was shocked to find that the broken body of the 3-headed lion king he had killed had actually managed to stand up. The 3 heads that it had lost had also regrown. However, the strange thing was that they were not the Lion King beast's heads, but Yu Ming's. Give me back my life! Yu Ming's head was on the Lion King beast's body, and it let out a sinister and strange roar. Yi Fei's gaze immediately turned cold, and he said coldly, I could kill you when you were alive, and I can still kill you after you're dead. Get out of my way, watch me chop all of you up. Kill. Shaman art, perish the gods. Boom. Yi Fei's golden treasure trove was completely set ablaze. His terrifying mind strength formed a boundless golden divine light that filled the entire golden arena. Not only did it disperse the surrounding blood-red light and sinister coldness, but at the same time, a shocking battle intent suddenly turned into a shocking sword of vital energy. It slashed apart the Lion King beast with Yu Ming's head, and smashed the blood puppet in the river of blood with a punch. Yi Fei unleashed the limits of his battle shaman body and also began to transform, turning into a terrifying dragon-like beast with fiery wings on its back. Roar. Yi Fei let out a furious roar. His whistling mind strength formed a special 8 notes of the heavenly dragon, which also shattered the vengeful souls that approached him. The 6 paths 7 arts of the 6 paths sacred sect had been pushed to the limits by Yi Fei. A total of 7 immemorial heavenly arts shot out at the same time. Even if these immemorial heavenly arts were activated with mind strength and could only unleash 70% of their power, 7 immemorial heavenly arts stacked together. Their power was also very terrifying. The shaman Dao light that filled the sky suddenly compressed rapidly. At the same time, boundless golden divine light erupted from Yi Fei's body like a hurricane, like the sun and moon. Before Xian Tian, who had transformed into a golden giant, could shoot the golden arrow in his hand, Yi Fei's azure dragon's fury, which was comparable to a dragon-like beast, had already charged in front of him and exchanged a punch with the golden giant. Yi Fei was unscathed. A body comparable to a divine artifact was nothing in the eyes of martial artists, but in terms of physical strength, it was weak. In the eyes of sorcerers, it was an absolute nightmare. With just one punch, Xian Tian's entire fist exploded in the air. Then, it was his arm, his chest, and his head. Boom! 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 Yi Fei's body was surrounded by blazing mind strength. The 6 paths 7 arts continuously bombarded the golden giant's vital points. By the time he finished using the 7 immemorial heavenly arts, Xian Tian was already nowhere to be found in the golden arena. After Yu Ming, another great sorcerer from Roland's palace was punched by Yi Fei. That was because he had forcefully destroyed it. Meanwhile, Yi Fei was still unscathed. The 6 paths 7 arts, in addition to the god-slaying battle technique and the golden blood sword, the power that Yi Fei had grasped was already equivalent to 9 immemorial heavenly arts, although the power of these heavenly arts was only 70%. However, a sorcerer's body was too weak compared to a martial god of the same level. Once a battle sorcerer like Yi Fei got close, no matter how strong a sorcerer was, only death awaited him. Kill. It was not enough to defeat Xian Tian. In order to obtain the final victory and become a member of the sorcerer tribe, Yi Fei had to defeat all the gold great sorcerers in front of him and the entire Roland's palace. Only then would no one dare to oppose him and challenge him. Yi Fei's madness and the terrifying combat strength of a battle sorcerer made all the sorcerers on the divine thrones turn pale. How is this possible? The battle sorcerer sect has always been the weakest. Even if he has the golden divine treasure, this boy can't be so strong. Grand Venerable Li Hua was shocked and angry. He was so angry that his body was trembling. Oh my God, 9 golden sorcerer technique. How long has it been since he broke through to the gold great sorcerer realm? He has already mastered so many great sorcerer technique. This is already close to the combat strength of an upper-level martial god of the human clan. A battle sorcerer can be so strong. Chapter 1874. All along, the sorcerer gods knew that the sorcerer tribe's power was only temporary. They could suppress the martial emperors and demigods of the human race at the sorcerer realm and the grand sorcerer realm. However, once a martial artist broke through the martial god realm and reached the supremacy realm, he would become an existence that the sorcerer gods had to look up to. Even an upper-level martial god could pose a great threat to the sorcerer gods. For example, at this moment Yi Fei, with the body of a battle wizard, had directly defeated all the young sorcerers in the arena. This was a good example. In front of a martial artist's physical body that was comparable to a divine artifact and the terrifying immemorial heavenly technique, the gold sorcerers with weak physical bodies were like fish on a chopping board once they got close to them. They had no ability to resist at all. However, in this process, the sorcerers had also fully demonstrated the strangeness and terror of sorcerer technique. Therefore, even if Yi Fei had defeated these sorcerers, he did not dare to give these sorcerers any chance to continue ascending the altar. After all, the sorcerers were not good at close combat. If these young gold sorcerers were given enough time to prepare and perform the heaven and earth sacrifice, the power of sorcerer techniques would also be extremely terrifying. Kill him! Weapon sorcerer, stop him quickly and buy time for us sorcerers to perform our sorcerer technique. We are going to activate sorcerer techniques and directly shatter the sealed divine treasure. In the arena, there were also smart people who could see their own strengths and weaknesses. There were even a few sober young sorcerers who tried to retreat and join forces to activate the powerful sorcerer technique. However, before they could really retreat, a huge gap suddenly exploded in the cloud of sorcerer insects that filled the sky. Yi Fei's expression was cold as he held the blood sword that was still dripping with blood. He raised his hand and released a beam of spiritual sword light that tore through the heavens and earth. It instantly shattered the 11 stone pillars on the golden arena. Similarly, the few gold sorcerers who had ascended the altar and tried to perform their sorcerer techniques were also shattered. Their bodies were also cut into two. They fell to the ground in extreme pain and fear, constantly struggling and wailing. However, they were countless times luckier than Xian Tian and Yu Ming. After all, Yi Fei continuously used many immemorial heavenly techniques and had to disguise them as battle technique. The amount of spiritual energy that he consumed was extremely terrifying. Even if he had the golden divine treasure, he would not be able to sustain it. That was why Yi Fei only cut the sorcerers in half and did not turn them into dust. For sorcerers, as long as their divine treasures were still there and their physical bodies were not completely destroyed, they would not be able to survive. They could activate sorcerer techniques and shed their skin. Of course, Yi Fei. Of course, in this process, Yi Fei had completely. He sorcerer techniques sorcerers. In the process, stage, level, were. But Yi Fei did not plan to do so. These young sorcerers are the geniuses of their respective golden palaces. Killing them all will not do me any good. I will offend all the sorcerers and even affect my plan to participate in the marriage alliance. It is better to quit while I am ahead and leave some dignity for these sorcerers. Yi Fei did not care about the gold sorcerers who were still wriggling and shedding their skin. He retracted his spiritual energy and put away his golden blood sword. His cold eyes stared at the remaining 9 sorcerers like a terrifying dragon. Who else dares to fight with me? Yi Fei's voice was very calm. But in the ears of these young sorcerers, there was a great feeling of fear growing and spreading. I admit defeat. I am willing to give this marriage alliance opportunity to the 9 sorcerers. Suddenly, the 2 weakest sorcerers who had not made a move all this time retreated to the edge of the arena in fear and rushed out. They were running away without a fight. Unfortunately, no one laughed at them at this time. Everyone was scared by Yi Fei and had lost the courage to fight. Soon, another 2 young sorcerers bowed to Yi Fei with bitter faces and hurried out of the golden arena. Even the 3 young sorcerers who had just shed their skin were no exception. Soon, the golden arena became extremely quiet. Only Yi Fei stood alone on the only intact stone pillar. He raised his eyes and looked at the group of sorcerers on the divine thrones. Who else dares to fight with me? Yi Fei stared at these sorcerers fearlessly, and then at Grand Venerable Li Hua. Humph, a villain intoxicated by success. If we had not made an oath not to interfere in this matter, I could have killed you 10,000 times with one hand. Grand Venerable Li Hua was furious. This time, he wanted to seize Yi Fei's weakness and attack Chen Liang's golden palace. However, in the end, not only had he suffered great losses, but he had also helped Yi Fei achieve his glory. Grand Monarch Li Flame was so furious that the flames wreathed him flickered like the wisps, as if he wished he could burn Yi Fei to a crisp. Yi Fei sneered, shameless boasting. If we were in the same realm, I would kill you as easily as killing a dog. How dare you? As the sorcerer god, Grand Monarch Li Huo was being contradicted like this. Grand Monarch Li Huo could not restrain his killing intent. Seeing that Yi Fei was invincible as a battle sorcerer, Grand Venerable Chen Liang had already stood up in ecstasy. He blocked Grand Venerable Li Huo's sight and said, "Li Huo, Shang Jiao is my disciple. You'd better not go too far." The faces of the other sorcerer gods changed. They also stood up and tried to persuade him. "Li Huo, Chen Liang, calm down. Don't ruin the important matter of our sorcerer tribe because of a small grudge. So, my disciple will marry a divine god's daughter. Do you agree to this?" Chen Liang seized the opportunity to ask further. The faces of the other 11 sorcerer gods suddenly became very ugly, but they had no choice. They had agreed to decide the person to marry through fighting. Although the sorcerer tribe was cruel, they attached great importance to oaths. Even the sorcerer gods did not dare to violate them easily. Although Grand Venerable Li Huo was extremely angry, he could only nod with a livid face and say, Well, Chen Liang, you win this time. Let's wait and see." Humph! Grand Venerable Li Huo left in a rage, not even bothering to look at Yi Fei. The other sorcerer gods smiled bitterly at the same time. Since the outcome had been decided, they could only nod together and say in a deep voice, "Since Shang Jiao won this battle, the person to marry into our sorcerer tribe will naturally be Shang Jiao. Congratulations, Grand Venerable Chen Liang. I was wondering why you took a battle sorcerer as your disciple. It turns out that you already knew the strength of a real battle sorcerer." There were also sorcerer gods who looked at Chen Liang enviously. If they had known that a battle sorcerer had such amazing potential, they would have taken Yi Fei as their disciple before Chen Liang did. However, it was obviously too late for regrets now. When the 11 sorcerer gods announced together that Yi Fei would represent the sorcerer tribe and Chen Liang's golden palace to marry a divine god, many of the sorcerers who were watching the battle outside Dark Underworld Hall cheered wildly. Most of the sorcerers who were cheering were battle sorcerers. Chapter 1875. Due to the decline of the battle sorcerer sect, even the sorcerer gods on the divine thrones didn't know that martial arts could also be used with mind power. Perhaps this was the reason why the battle sorcerer union had declined in the sorcerer tribe. After all, if a sorcerer knew both sorcery and martial arts, it was undoubtedly a terrifying thing. By then, the advantage that the human tribe's earthly venerables had over the sorcerer gods of the sorcerer tribe would be gone. The sorcerer tribe wouldn't have failed to break through the human tribe's impregnable pass after hundreds of thousands of years. "Shang Jiao, come up here. I'll introduce you to a few elders." As soon as he stepped down from the arena, Chen Liang's joyful voice came from the divine thrones. Obviously, Yi Fei's victory this time had made Chen Liang proud. At the same time, the great power of Yi Fei's combat skills had also piqued the interest of the other sorcerer gods. That was why they had jointly asked Chen Liang to invite Yi Fei over for a chat. Yi Fei could only go over and bow to the sorcerer gods one by one. "Greetings to all the sorcerer gods. Haha, my friend Shang Jiao, you're welcome. Since ancient times, the sorcerer tribe has been one family. Since you're my disciple, you're our nephew." The black-robed sorcerer god standing next to Chen Liang was very good with words. If Yi Fei knew that Xian Tian, who he had killed, was this sorcerer god's disciple, he would be even more surprised. After all, he had just killed Xian Tian. Not only was this black-robed sorcerer god not angry, but he also put down his pride and tried to befriend him. This showed how shrewd this sorcerer god was. After befriending Yi Fei, the black-robed sorcerer god's eyes lit up. He stared at Yi Fei and asked, "My friend Shang Jiao, there's something I don't understand. The other battle sorcerer gods are useless except for their physical defense. Why are your combat skills so powerful that you can release so many of them at once? Is this related to the golden divine treasure? Although the other sorcerer gods didn't say anything, their eyes were all fixed on Yi Fei. This immediately made Yi Fei feel an invisible pressure. He knew that if he lied at this moment, with the strength of these sorcerer gods and the strangeness of their sorcery, it would definitely arouse their suspicion. Fortunately, these sorcerer deities only asked about battle shamans and not the origins of my battle technique. Otherwise, it would be even harder to explain. Yi Fei sighed in his heart, but he had already put on an honest smile that was unique to honest people. Seniors, I don't know if the other battle shamans are strong or weak, but I do know that in the memories that Shang Jiu gave me, his strongest point wasn't his spells, but his battle skills. Yi Fei had no choice but to selectively tell them about Shang Jiu. The grand sorcerers on the divine seats all nodded in agreement. While Yi Fei was talking, they had all been secretly activating their magic and monitoring Yi Fei's every move. Even if Yi Fei said half a word to lie to them, he wouldn't be able to hide from their senses. This brat is telling the truth. I didn't expect our guess to be true. In our shaman tribe, the strongest shaman isn't a weapon shaman or a weapon shaman, but a battle shaman. That's strange. Since battle shamans are so strong, why is the battle shaman sect in decline? It's as if someone doesn't want a strong battle shaman to appear in our shaman tribe. Those who could become sorcerer deities were not simple people. These sorcerer deities had only asked Yi Fei one question, but countless questions had already surfaced in their minds. These questions also caused some of the sorcerer deities to become unprecedentedly serious. This also caused Yi Fei to be secretly nervous. He was afraid that these sorcerer deities would ask him about the origins of his battle technique. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to explain it. Moreover, if his explanation didn't make sense, the sorcerer deities might become suspicious of his identity. Therefore, before these sorcerer deities could continue asking, Yi Fei had already gritted his teeth and decided to give these sorcerer deities a harsh lesson. He didn't want these sorcerer deities to ask so many questions and accidentally give him away. Yi Fei quickly condensed a series of golden words with his psychic energy and said, "Dear Venerables, this junior dares not hide anything from you. This is the battle shaman path that I'm practicing. Seniors, please take a look and see if this battle shaman path is different from what other battle shamans practice." "What? Battle shaman? Quick, show it to us." As expected, when Yi Fei took out the battle shaman path that Shang Jiu had passed down to him, all the sorcerer deities were visibly moved. However, the other sorcerer deities were ecstatic. Chen Liang, on the other hand, had a change in expression. There was a hint of anger in his voice as he reprimanded, "Nonsense. How can the battle shaman path be spread so easily? Great Senior, please forgive me. I don't want to spread it either." However, Senior Shang Jiu said that his greatest regret in life was not being able to revitalize the battle shaman path. Therefore, he told me that if I have the chance, I must spread the true battle shaman path. Yi Fei's excuse was dignified. Even Chen Liang was speechless. If he objected, he would become a sinner of the sorcerer tribe. However, even so, there were still some sorcerer deities who refused to let Yi Fei off. The black-robed sorcerer deity suddenly spoke. "This battle shaman path seems to only have the upper part and not the lower part. What about the lower part? Why don't you hand it over as well?" Yi Fei retorted in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Handing over the upper part of the battle shaman path is to revitalize the battle shaman path. Keeping the lower part of the battle shaman path is to settle down and settle down. May I ask, Great Senior, would you casually spread something that would help you settle down and settle down? You! The black-robed sorcerer deity's face flushed red. He wanted to fly into a rage, but he couldn't find an excuse to do so. Beside him, Great Senior Chen Liang also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, He looked at Yi Fei with an almost undetectable trace of coldness in his eyes. He shouted in a deep voice, "Nonsense. Don't be rude to Great Senior Jade Dragon. You can go first. Come back to Roland's palace with me. I have some questions to ask you." Great Senior Chen Liang had deliberately emphasized the word master. Not only did he show his authority, but he also made it impossible for Yi Fei to refuse his orders. Yi Fei was instantly enraged. "This old thing, if you truly treat me as your disciple, I'll accept it even if you hit me or scold me. Unfortunately, you have ill intentions towards me." Despite his anger, Yi Fei remained calm and composed on the surface. He said with a hint of grievance and an apologetic tone, "Master, I can't go back with you now." "Why?" Seeing that Yi Fei had finally admitted that he was his master, Great Senior Chen Liang's tone softened slightly. "I'm a person who will take revenge for all enmity and repay all kindness. When I came to Lonely Ridge, I was taken care of by several bronze shamans. Now that I've struck it rich and met my master, I must repay them. Master, please allow me to return to Roland's palace after I've met these friends and repaid them. I'll ask for forgiveness from Master." Yi Fei's attitude was very sincere. Seeing this, many shaman gods couldn't help but nod inwardly. In addition, Yi Fei had taken the initiative to offer his half-step battle shaman path and shown mercy in the arena by not killing all of their disciples. For a moment, many shaman gods admired this honest little fellow in front of them. "Great Senior Chen Liang, it's rare for your disciple to be so loyal and righteous. Let him go." "All right, since you have such intentions, I won't stop you. However, you must repay your kindness. It's too shabby for you to go alone. Gong Zhu, take a group of people and personally escort Shang Jiao to Little Shaman City. Remember to go quickly and return quickly. You must also prevent some people from plotting against you on the way." Chapter 1876. Grand Monarch Chen Liang thought for a moment, then took out a magic crystal pagoda and handed it to Yi Fei. "Since you're repaying a debt of gratitude as my disciple, you can't be stingy. Here are 10,000 magic crystals. Give them to the warlocks and tell them that the doors of my golden palace will always be open to them." Grand Monarch Chen Liang was indeed a shrewd old fox. His methods were extraordinary. After discovering that he might have sent Zhu Gong to spy on them, he immediately handed over a large number of magic crystals. Even though Yi Fei knew that Grand Monarch Chen Liang seemed to have other intentions, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. He wondered if he had misunderstood Grand Monarch Chen Liang. But it's a waste not to take benefits. Regardless of whether there's a misunderstanding or not, I'll take these benefits first. Since he couldn't figure it out, Yi Fei didn't want to think too much about it. He took the magic crystal pagoda and subconsciously reached out with his psychic power to check the magic crystals inside. Squeak, squeak. At this moment, Xiao Chao suddenly discovered something in the beast mark space. He hurriedly made a hand gesture to stop Yi Fei from opening the magic crystal pagoda. Yi Fei didn't bat an eyelid. He just picked up the magic crystal pagoda and glanced at it before putting it away. Disappointment and confusion flashed across Grand Monarch Chen Liang's eyes. "Aren't you going to open it and take a look?" Grand Monarch Chen Liang asked. "Master gave it to me, so it can't be wrong." "Thank you, Master." Yi Fei's expression was very respectful. He was so respectful that Grand Monarch Chen Liang couldn't find any fault with him. At this moment, the other warlock gods came over and pulled Grand Monarch Chen Liang aside, inviting him to study the secrets of the warlock cultivation method together. Grand Monarch Chen Liang couldn't refuse. He could only glance at Zhu Gong before his gaze landed on Yi Fei. He said meaningfully, "Go and come back as soon as possible. Master still has a few battle skills. When you return to the Golden Palace, I'll teach them to you." "Thank you, Master." Yi Fei bowed again. When he saw that Chen Liang had no other instructions, he quickly left Dark Hall with Zhu Gong. As Chen Liang's trusted subordinate, Gong Zhu naturally understood the meaning behind the seemingly careless look. He immediately brought a few gold-rank magi and drove a magnificent black warship over from afar. Gong Zhu said enviously, "Brother, you're really lucky this time. This is the Great Senior's carriage. Throughout history, other than the Great Senior, no one has ever sat on it. Thanks to you, Big Brother can finally sit on a warship and experience the awe-inspiring might of a Great Senior. That's right, brother, let's set off quickly. Let's go to Little Witch City." "All right, I'll do as you say," Yi Fei said calmly. Then, he casually found an excuse and walked into a room in the warship. Gong Zhu's originally smiling face suddenly became incomparably gloomy. What is the Great Senior thinking? Sometimes I feel that the Great Senior seems to have killing intent towards this kid, but sometimes I feel that the Great Senior values this kid very much. For so many years, he has secretly formed an alliance with the God of Heaven. However, I have never seen the Great Senior value a person or a matter so much. Gong Zhu was a little bewildered. Obviously, he didn't know whether he should take advantage of the fact that Yi Fei was still alive to ask for the 2,000 magic crystals that Yi Fei owed him. Of course, Yi Fei shouldn't even think about not paying back the magic crystals that he owed. After returning to the room and making sure that there were no surveillance around, Yi Fei took out the magic crystal pagoda that Gong Zhu gave him and personally set up a layer of spiritual defensive light shield. Only then did Yi Fei release Xiao Chao, the dragon turtle, and Ling Siki from the beast mark space. Xiao Chao was still the same as before. The first thing he did when he came out was to grab a piece of mind power from somewhere and roll around happily on the ground, causing the dragon turtle to gulp repeatedly. However, Ling Siki didn't play with Xiao Chao this time. Instead, she reminded Yi Fei sternly, "Little Guogua, you didn't bring in the pagoda that the Great Senior Chen Liang gave you, right?" "Don't worry, I left that pagoda outside," Yi Fei said solemnly. When Xiao Chao had reminded him, he had already known that there was something wrong with that pagoda. Even though his mind power hadn't detected anything wrong with it, the divine eye of heaven's spiritual eye was very special. However, Xiao Cao's heaven and earth spiritual eye was extremely mystical. She could see many things that even the martial god couldn't see. Yi Fei asked Ling Siki curiously, "What did Xiao Chao find on it?" "An eye. A very evil eye." In the beast mark space, Ling Siki had been communicating with Xiao Chao for a long time. When she was talking, she took out a small black card. There was a strange triangular vertical eye drawn on it. It looked very much like the eye of a snake, but it was even more sinister and evil. With just one look, Yi Fei felt a chill run down his spine. He was even more certain that the Great Senior Chen Liang didn't have good intentions when he took him in as a disciple. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned ugly as he muttered to himself, "What should I do? I finally defeated the other golden palaces and became a member of the Great Senior Chen Liang's family. I don't know why that old fox is secretly plotting against me. Could it be that I gave myself away and was discovered by that old fox? Did he?" However, he quickly rejected this conjecture. If the Great Senior Chen Liang had really discovered my identity, he wouldn't have tolerated me until now, let alone forcefully take me in as a disciple. Yi Fei was somewhat bewildered. Although Ling Siki was innocent, it didn't mean that she wasn't sensible. Hearing Yi Fei's analysis, Ling Siki's little face turned pale. She said in horror, "Little Guogua, let's run. No matter what the witch god's goal is, as long as we run away, he won't be able to hurt us. At this critical moment, we have to be strong." Ling Siki suddenly paused. After all, in the Tianling continent, women were respected. There were domineering women everywhere. Ling Siki naturally hadn't heard of words like, "a strong warrior breaks his arm." However, Ling Siki quickly thought of another sentence to replace it. Ling Siki waved her fist and said, "Little Guogua, at this critical moment, we have to have the determination to break the dragon turtle's tail." Roar! The dragon turtle was surrounding Xiao Qiao and was rolling around with Xiao Qiao. It also took the opportunity to steal the spiritual energy that Xiao Qiao grabbed. When it suddenly heard Ling Siki say that she wanted to break its tail, the dragon turtle's face turned ashen. Its black mouth also turned white at a speed visible to the naked eye. Whoosh! The dragon turtle had already retracted its tail into its shell. It had also made up its mind not to reveal its tail for the next month. Yi Fei was speechless. However, Ling Siki's words reminded him that since the witch god had secretly attacked him, if he didn't think of a way to retaliate, it would be extremely dangerous for him to continue staying in the witch tribe. Chapter 1877. Yi Fei did not act rashly and continued to cultivate silently in his room. Gong Zhu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Yi Fei was fine. After all, the battle prowess that Yi Fei had displayed was too terrifying. Gong Zhu was not sure if he would be able to stop Yi Fei even if he had 3 gold-rank magi with him. Yi Fei. Fortunately, this kid didn't run away. As long as he doesn't run away, I can't be bothered with him. The great sage will take care of him later. Gong Zhu steered the warship and rushed to Little Witch City at the fastest speed possible. Knowing that the great sage's warship had arrived, the city lord of Little Witch City, a gold-rank magus, immediately brought his subordinates to receive the great sage. Even though he knew that the person who had come was not the great sage but the great sage's disciple, the city lord of Little Witch City did not show the slightest bit of disrespect. He respectfully invited Yi Fei to the city lord's mansion and followed Yi Fei's orders to gather the bronze-rank magi who had brought Yi Fei to Little Witch City. They came looking for him together. There were more than 20 magi in total. When they had brought Yi Fei to Little Witch City, it was purely because their team was short of manpower that they had captured Yi Fei. However, these magi had never dreamed that the little magus they had brought in would not only break through to become a gold-rank magus in such a short period of time. The great magus had even joined the Roland's palace and became the witch god's disciple. While these magi were shocked, they also looked at Yi Fei with envious gazes. Yi Fei also chatted with these magi very amiably. After all, without these people, he would not have been able to enter Little Witch City and the ancestral witch temple smoothly. To some extent, it was these bronze-rank magi who had helped him cover his identity. Yi Fei decided to be generous for once. He took out a lot of magic crystals and gave them to them. Of course, Yi Fei's purpose in coming to Little Witch City was to get rid of Chen Liang's surveillance. When he realized that he couldn't get rid of Chen Liang, Yi Fei quickly thought of a way. That was to use force to force Gong Zhu, Chen Liang's trusted aide, to reveal Chen Liang's secret. Hence, after receiving these bronze magi and holding a banquet, Yi Fei secretly pulled the worker to the side and whispered, "Brother, come here for a moment. I have something to tell you." As Gong Zhu drank his wine, he faked a smile and said in disdain, "Brother, you're not going to tell me that you're actually the new emperor, are you?" Gong Zhu had already heard this joke twice. He didn't find it funny at all. He even had the urge to pin Yi Fei to the ground and beat him up. "If you want to tell me a joke, fine. But first, return the 2,000 magic crystals you owe me." Earlier, Gong Zhu had seen clearly that Yi Fei had paid for the Magi's magic crystals out of his own pocket. In other words, Yi Fei hadn't touched the 10,000 magic crystals that Chen Liang had given him. He had kept all of them for himself. Hence, after thinking it over, Gong Zhu finally decided to ask Yi Fei for the magic crystals he had lent him. Yi Fei was a little speechless. However, he also discovered Gong Zhu's other shortcoming. He was greedy for money. Most greedy people weren't unyielding, so it was very likely that he would be able to get the secret out of Gong Zhu. Yi Fei nodded decisively and said, You're my brother. What's mine is yours too. How can 2,000 magic crystals be enough? To be honest, I kept the great sage's magic crystals because I wanted to split them equally with you. What? Split them equally? Gong Zhu's eyes brightened. He slapped his thigh and became incomparably enthusiastic. Oh, my brother, why didn't you say so earlier? I really didn't misjudge you. I didn't take you as my brother in vain. What are you talking about, brother? If you hadn't brought me to the Golden Palace, how could I have received the great sage's appreciation? This is all thanks to you, brother. Let's not alarm the others. Let's find a place and split the magic crystals first. Otherwise, the other great magi will be jealous. Yi Fei said in a low voice. Then, he secretly pointed at the empty warship. Gong Zhu smiled knowingly. He understood that Yi Fei didn't want to attract attention. Gong Zhu happily reopened the warship's restriction. The two of them re-entered the warship and walked into Yi Fei's room. Yi Fei said generously, Brother, you've helped me so much. I don't have anything to repay you with. Here, these 10,000 magic crystals are all yours. What, 10,000 magic crystals? Gong Zhu's breathing quickened. He was so excited that his whole body was trembling. When he took the magic crystal pagoda, he sneered in his heart, Haha, this kid is really stupid and naive. I sold him and he actually helped me count the money. This pagoda looks familiar. Yi Fei smiled and said, Great Magi Gong Zhu, don't you think this pagoda looks familiar? Shangjiu, what do you mean? Great Magi Gong Zhu suddenly became incomparably angry. He found that the magic crystal pagoda was actually lent to Yi Fei by him. What made him even more unbearable was that there wasn't even a single magic crystal in it. This seemingly simple and honest kid in front of him actually dared to trick him. Facing Gong Zhu's anger, Yi Fei didn't get angry. He only showed a very bright and simple smile and said, Nothing much. I just want you to meet someone. Ling Siki greets Great Magi Gong Zhu. In Yi Fei's room, a little girl the size of a rice grain suddenly appeared, then quickly grew bigger. She turned into a little girl about 10 years old. Great Magi Gong Zhu turned back in horror. Human demigod! How dare you sneak into our little Magi city and enter the Great Magi's warship? Wait, this is the Great Magi's warship. How could a human demigod break in? Although Gong Zhu was greedy and had a big mouth, he was definitely not stupid as he could become a great magi. With just a little thought, he felt that something was wrong. The great magi immediately roared, and his great magi gold skin emitted terrifying golden flames. Without saying a word, he rushed out of Yi Fei's room. He also wanted to escape from the warship. Unfortunately, Gong Zhu's movements were fast, but Yi Fei's were even faster. Just as Ling Siki appeared and attracted Gong Zhu's attention, Yi Fei had already roared in a low voice. 8 immemorial celestial arts were instantly activated by him and blasted towards Gong Zhu. Afraid that this wouldn't hurt Gong Zhu, Yi Fei made up his mind. The moment he released the 8 immemorial celestial arts, he also used Dutian Phaseless Disaster in one breath. Roar! In Yi Fei's room, the roar of the heavenly dragon and the destructive light of the Phaseless Disaster continuously blasted on Gong Zhu's body. Even though the great shaman Gong Zhu had the strength of a peak midgod, he was caught off guard and was heavily injured. He spat out blood and staggered. Ling Siki, who was opposite him, exhaled and turned back into a beautiful young lady. She smashed Gong Zhu's nose until it bled. Shangjiu, how dare you collude with the human race and betray the great magi? Gong Zhu roared furiously. After all, he was an experienced great magi, an expert of the magi tribe who was comparable to a mid-level martial god. Even though he was beaten so badly, he could still struggle. Yi Fei and Ling Siki were both shocked. Just as Yi Fei was hesitating whether he should be more ruthless to shut Gong Zhu up, Xiao Chao suddenly charged out of the beast mark space riding on the dragon turtle. Furthermore, the dragon turtle had become incomparably huge. Its terrifying weight was like a bright black star. With a boom, it fell on its buttocks. With a bang, it sat on Gong Zhu's head. Chapter 1878. Dragon Turtle, you can actually make a grand shaman faint from sitting on him. Yi Fei and Ling Siki widened their eyes. Xiao Chao also had an incredulous expression. Only the dragon turtle was smug. For the first time, it felt that eating too much was also a great ability. Its tail, which was originally tucked in, couldn't help but stand erect. There was a reason why Yi Fei tricked the Grand Shaman Gongzhu onto the warship. After all, this was the sorcerer god's warship, which was comparable to the divine temple's sun god ship. As long as the restriction was lifted, no matter how intense the battle was, it wouldn't arouse the suspicion of the other gold shamans in Little Shaman City. However, as fast as he could, he dragged the unconscious Grand Shaman Gongzhu out from under the dragon turtles and threw him into the magic crystal pagoda. Then Yi Fei, Xiao Chao, Ling Siki, and the dragon turtle rushed in together. "Little brother, what should we do?" Ling Siki was a little worried. Their original plan was to capture the Grand Shaman Gongzhu, but they didn't expect the dragon turtle to make a Grand Shaman faint. This was also the biggest weakness of shamans. They were too weak in close combat. If the other party was the martial god, and the dragon turtle dared to sit on him like that, the dragon turtle would probably be the one to explode. However, although shamans had weak defense, as a gold shaman, the Grand Shaman Gongzhu's recovery ability was still very strong. After being unconscious for a dozen breaths, the Grand Shaman Gongzhu regained consciousness with his powerful spiritual energy. He opened his eyes in a daze and saw Yi Fei and Ling Siki, who was beside Yi Fei. Qi's eyes were burning with rage. "Shangjiu, what are you doing? As a shaman, you actually surrendered to a lowly human." "Lowly human? Grand Shaman Gongzhu, it seems like you still don't understand the situation." "Dragon turtle, slap him!" Yi Fei sneered. The dragon turtle immediately took out a black jar and smashed it on the Grand Shaman Gongzhu's face. The Grand Shaman Gongzhu's nose bled again, and he was so angry that tears fell out on the spot. He was a gold shaman, who was so noble and honorable, but he was knocked out by a black turtle and even had his nose broken. Blood. The great shaman Gongzhu's eyes were blazing with anger. He roared, "Shamans can be killed, but not humiliated. Shangjiu, I thought you were my brother, but you colluded with the human race and plotted against me." Yi Fei sneered and said in a low voice, "You think I'm your brother? You've been spying on me and treating me like a brother. You knew that Grand Sovereign Chen Liang wanted to harm me, so why didn't you warn me?" Great Shaman Gongzhu's face was filled with shock. "Great Senior told me to monitor you. That is a secret. How could you possibly know? Just who are you?" "Great Shaman Gongzhu, who am I? Didn't I tell you earlier?" "I'm Yi Fei, the new emperor you're looking for." With a thought, Yi Fei removed the concealment divine battle robe. His hidden spirit immediately reappeared. His appearance and aura also completely recovered. "The new emperor, you're actually the new emperor." The great shaman Gongzhu had been ordered to hunt down Yi Fei, so of course he had seen Yi Fei's portrait and was familiar with Yi Fei's aura. When he saw the young man in the black robe in front of him, and recalled how Yi Fei had joked about him being the new emperor twice in a row, the great shaman Gongzhu suddenly felt very sullen and infuriated. After all this time, the new emperor he was looking for was right in front of him. Not only did he not discover him, he even thought that Yi Fei was joking. "I hate you so much." The great shaman Gongzhu let out an extremely regretful roar. Suddenly, a terrifying light flashed in his eyes. But before the great shaman Gongzhu could use his shaman technique, Yi Fei suddenly snorted coldly and also mobilized his golden divine treasure. A terrifying spiritual pressure formed into a spiritual mountain and crashed down on the great shaman Gong Zhu. The great shaman Gong Zhu had been seriously injured by Yi Fei, and his golden divine treasure was a level lower than the golden divine treasure. Under the suppression of Yi Fei's golden divine treasure, he suddenly couldn't move. He could only stare at Yi Fei with a murderous gaze and roar, "Human Emperor Yi, killing me won't do you any good. Once I die, because great sovereign Chen Liang will know immediately and come to kill you. Don't worry. As an elder brother, although you have bad intentions towards me, we are sworn brothers. I won't kill you as long as you answer a few of my questions," Yi Fei said in a low voice. A cold smile flashed across the great shaman Gong Zhu's face. "Do you want to know why Supreme Chen Liang asked me to spy on you? Let me tell you, that's a pipe dream. I will never betray Supreme Chen Liang, let alone reveal any secrets to lowly humans like you. You're about to die and you still dare to curse. See how I'll beat you." Ling Siki was very angry. She suddenly grabbed the dragon turtle's black jar and smashed it at the great shaman Gong Zhu. Clang! The black jar and the great shaman Gong Zhu's head collided. As a result, there was a hidden horn on the great shaman Gong Zhu's head. Not only did the black jar not break the horn, but it also broke a hole in itself. The dragon turtle was very distressed. Yi Fei was also a little surprised. Then he thought of something and said coldly, "So that's how it is. Martial arts and battle skills can be interlinked. Weapon shaman and supreme magic shaman can also be interlinked. No wonder you can withstand two of my supreme skills without fainting. You're actually walking the path of supreme magic shaman and weapon shaman. What did you say? Martial arts and battle skills can be interlinked. How is that possible?" The great shaman Gong Zhu was also shocked by Yi Fei's words. Suddenly, he came to a realization. In the Golden Arena you didn't use battle skills at all, but martial arts. How is it possible that our shaman tribe can also use martial arts? The great shaman Gong Zhu was completely stunned. Yi Fei understood this feeling. When he discovered the secret of the interconnection between battle skills and martial arts, he also felt that it was unbelievable. But the truth was so. "For the sake of my sworn brother Gong Zhu, I'll give you one last chance. Tell me the information I want and I promise not to kill you. What do you think?" Yi Fei asked forcefully. "Yi Fei, even if you beat me to death, I will never lower my head to you lowly humans." The great shaman Gong Zhu was very unyielding. Yi Fei didn't expect to be able to make a great golden shaman submit easily with just a few words. "Xiao Qiao, try using your vine whip." Xiao Qiao's eyes lit up when she heard this. She had fought against martial gods before, but she didn't seem to have fought against a great shaman. Therefore, Xiao Qiao happily summoned a vine whip and hit the great shaman Gong Zhu with it. The great shaman Gong Zhu immediately laughed wantonly. "Ha ha, is there no one else in your human tribe? The ones who come out are either turtles or little girls who can't grow up. This is so funny." Boom! Before the great shaman Gong Zhu could finish laughing, a violent 8-colored spiritual wind suddenly filled the entire magic crystal pagoda. The great shaman Gong Zhu's words undoubtedly angered Xiao Qiao and Ling Siki at the same time. The dragon turtle couldn't stop it in time. It could only look at Ling Siki with heartache. Then, it picked up the black jar and smashed it at the great shaman Gong Zhu's head. It was unknown whether it was due to the great shaman Gong Zhu's anger or the right angle, but with a crack, great sage Chen Liang's horn was broken. However, Grand Monarch Chen Liang didn't care about his broken horn at all. After all, no matter how hard the black vat hit him, it was only a flesh wound. When Xiao Qiao got angry, she would lash out with her vine whip, which was a terrifying killing weapon. Chapter 1879. A gold-rank Grand Magus did not have a divine soul and could not feel the pain of the god beating whipping his soul. However, the power absorption of the god-beating whip was still there. If the Grand Magus Gongju could resist, it would be fine. However, he was now seriously injured and his golden divine treasure was completely suppressed by Yi Fei's golden divine treasure. At this moment, the Grand Magus Gongju was undoubtedly a huge magic crystal. When Xiao Chao's vine whip whipped over with the 8-colored spiritual wind, a layer of majestic spiritual energy flowed through the vine whip and into Xiao Chao's body. Xiao Chao could not help but burp as if he was very full. The dragon turtle was envious. The Grand Magus Gongju let out a terrified scream. "What are you? How can you absorb my spiritual energy? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." Spiritual energy was the source of a Grand Magus's power. It was similar to a martial artist's blood essence. Once a martial artist lost too much of his blood essence, he would grow old and die. By the same logic, if a Grand Magus lost too much of his spiritual energy, not only would his divine treasure level drop, but his divine treasure might also collapse and he would become an ordinary person. To the Grand Magus Gongju, who had reached the gold-rank Grand Magus realm and was comparable to an intermediate martial god, this was definitely worse than killing him. "Xiao Chao, he actually called you a Grand Magus. You can't forgive him. He must be beaten up." Ling Siki spoke up for Xiao Chao. Squeak! Xiao Chao burped. This meant that Xiao Chao was also very angry. Once Xiao Chao was angry, the consequences would be quite serious. Boom! A loud sound of a violent spiritual wind whistling through the entire pagoda space could be heard. Xiao Chao had already used all her strength. The vine whip in her hand turned into more than a dozen vine whip. In the end, these vine whips gathered together to form a special, emerald green divine whip shadow. Pa 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 pa. It hit the Grand Magus Gongju's body. That feeling was no different from a mortal being struck by lightning. Even though Grand Magus Gongju did not have a divine soul, he could not help but let out a painful scream. What he felt was not the pain of his body, but the great grief and anger in his heart. This was because the deity's striking whip that Xiao Chao had summoned with all her strength had actually caused a clear crack to appear on the divine treasures of the great shaman Gongju. This kind of injury immediately caused the great shaman Gongju to be stunned. Gongju's strength immediately. If Xiao Chao whipped him again, it was likely that great shaman Gongju would fall from a lower-level martial god to an ordinary silver-skinned shaman. It was also this discovery that made the great shaman of Gongju scream in fear. "This little girl is so terrifying. She actually broke my divine treasure. I have been working so hard for 300 years, and finally, I became a senior magus from the lowest junior magus. I have suffered so much, endured so much humiliation and suffering. I cannot let my divine treasures shatter, and I absolutely do not want to turn back to silver skin. Grand Magus, Brother Yi, Emperor Yi, ladies, Brother Black Turtle, I beg you, let me go." As Yi Fei expected, a greedy person like Gongju was definitely not a stubborn person who would face death unflinchingly. He was even worse than the blood demon. At least the blood demon persisted for an hour before he surrendered. Gongju, on the other hand, had decisively betrayed Grand Magus Chen Liang after being whipped twice. At this time, Gongju did not need Yi Fei to interrogate him. He was afraid that he would fall from the Grand Magus realm. He spilled the beans and told him everything about how Grand Magus Chen Liang had asked him to spy on Yi Fei. "That's all I know. As for why Grand Magus Chen Liang asked me to spy on you, I really don't know. Brother Yi, Emperor Yi, for the sake of us being sworn brothers, please let me go." Gongju looked at Yi Fei in horror and almost begged. He was not a person who would face death unflinchingly. He was also famous for his big mouth and bootlicker in Qinliang's Golden Palace. In order to survive, he naturally did everything he could. "By the way, I still have more than 4,000 magic crystals. If you let me go, I'll give you all of them later. I lent you 2,000, and you still have more than 4,000. Yi Fei was very surprised. The dragon turtle's eyes widened even more fiercely. He hurriedly went to persuade Xiao Qiao to stop hitting him. If senior shaman Gongzhu was beaten down to the level of a senior shaman, this person would commit suicide in a fit of anger. Then, the loss would be too great. Xiao Qiao took back the vine whip. It was not because he listened to the dragon turtle's advice, but because the spiritual energy of the Grand Magus was too strong. Xiao Qiao only used the deity whipping whip to absorb it twice, but he already felt full. Chunliang, since you don't treat me as your disciple, don't blame me for not treating you as my teacher. Gongzhu, if you want me to let you go, it's very simple. I want you to return to Chunliang's side and find out why Chunliang wants you to spy on me. You are his confidant. If you ask, he will definitely reveal something. Yi Fei thought for a moment. He quickly thought of a way to make use of Gongzhu. That was to sow dissension. He could directly instigate Gongzhu, Chunliang's confidant, to betray him and let him spy on Chunliang to obtain information. Gongzhu's expression immediately changed. The plan I revealed to you is already very dangerous. You actually want me to be a witch traitor. Yi Fei coldly warned Gongzhu with a simple smile. Anyway, you have already betrayed me once. It doesn't matter if you betray me a second time. By the way, I recorded everything you said just now. You said that if I bring this back and give it to Chunliang, you're not the human emperor, you're the devil. What sins have I committed to actually become sworn brothers with you? You've tricked me to death. Gongzhu was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot. He couldn't help but shed tears of regret. He reluctantly compromised. You said that I betrayed you once. I don't care if I do it again. The second time, I'm willing to be your spy. But human Emperor Yi, don't burn the bridge after crossing the river and sell me out. Brother, don't worry. I'm an honest person. If you don't believe me, I can make an oath or sign the witch oath. Yi Fei's expression was serious. He also lifted part of the suppression on Gongzhu. Gongzhu smiled bitterly. He also stood up and said seriously, Human Emperor Yi, don't joke around. Who in the witch tribe didn't know that the human emperor's oath was bullshit? It definitely couldn't be trusted. I want to officially become sworn brothers with you. With heaven and earth as my witness, we will swear a blood oath. Whoever goes back on their word will die a horrible death. Gongzhu threw caution to the wind. In order to live, even if he had to be a witch traitor, he would accept it. Yi Fei was speechless. He was obviously an honest person. Why didn't anyone believe him? Of course, this was also Wang Bai's fault. He had ruined the human emperor's reputation too thoroughly. Now, he had implicated himself. However, considering that there were many witches in the witch tribe who needed the cooperation of a witch traitor like Gongzhu, Yi Fei couldn't refuse. He could only nod and say, Okay, we will swear a blood oath. However, this elder brother must be me. Chapter 1880. Cursing angrily was one thing. With his life in Yi Fei's hands, the great shaman could only force a smile. He formally burned yellow paper with Yi Fei, announced his birthday, and knelt in all directions, officially becoming sworn brothers. Then, the two of them cut their fingers together and shed their life essence blood, holding an ancient and solemn blood oath. Although this oath didn't have a divine soul oath, nor was it bound by an innate divine spirit like the ancestral shaman's oath, the great shaman miraculously felt relieved. Yi Fei also felt very speechless. He didn't believe in a binding oath, but he believed in a blood oath that didn't have any binding force. From this, it could be seen how thoroughly Wang Bai had destroyed the reputation of the human emperor. However, if he asked himself honestly, although the blood oath didn't have an absolute binding force, as long as the great shaman didn't do anything to betray him, with Yi Fei's character, he really couldn't do anything to the great shaman. However, second brother, although we have feelings for each other, we can't be careless about the ancestral shaman's oath that we should sign. After the blood oath was completed, Yi Fei naturally assumed the posture of an elder brother. The great shaman was a few hundred years old. It was already very disadvantageous for him to become sworn brothers with Yi Fei, but he still had to settle for being the second brother. He was very angry, but when he saw Xiao Chao burping and looking at him with sparkling eyes, obviously already thinking of him as a human-shaped magic crystal, the great shaman couldn't help but show fear on his face. He obediently and solemnly swore the ancestral shaman's oath, promising that he would never betray Yi Fei. He was willing to be the second brother and work like an ox or a horse for Yi Fei. Yi Fei still didn't dare to rest assured. He repeatedly checked this oath and immediately pointed out a few slippery places in the great shaman's oath. Second brother, are you bullying me because I'm an honest person? You only said that you won't betray me, but there's no time limit. This can be interpreted as you won't betray me now, but in the future, you will still betray me. You might betray me. Also, you haven't written down the punishment for betraying me clearly. You're not sincere at all. Every time Yi Fei pointed out a place, Gong Zhu's complexion would turn a shade paler. By the time Yi Fei finished speaking, Gong Zhu had already collapsed to the ground. Only now did he realize that in this world, the most terrifying person wasn't Empyrean darkness, but an honest person like Yi Fei. Tianfeng tribe. Countless magi were panicking as they discussed amongst themselves. Have you heard? Shang Jiao is back. That terrifying witch. He's coming for revenge again. What? Shang Jiao? Heavens! That devil is not dead. He's still alive. Back then, he almost destroyed our tribe. Could it be that the heavens want our tribe to perish? In the Heavenly Wind tribe, Shang Jiao was definitely a scarier existence than the devil. As a half-wizard, he had condensed the golden divine treasure and single-handedly slaughtered a powerful tribe with hundreds of senior wizards, almost exterminating the entire tribe. Even though tens of thousands of years had passed since his battle prowess, it still made many older gold-rank magi tremble in fear. Then, everyone looked in the same direction. The palace where the tribe leader was. That was where the current tribe leader of the Heavenly Wind tribe, Jin Shi, was in seclusion. Everyone in the tribe knew that the bloodbath back then was all caused by Jin Shi. If it weren't for Jin Shi's arrogance, he wouldn't have forced Shang Jiao to become a witch and become an existence that struck fear in the entire Heavenly Wind tribe. As for Jin Shi's father, after discovering the powerful talent that Shang Jiao had displayed, he had died in endless regret and pain. In other words, the only person in the Heavenly Wind tribe who could stop Shang Jiao's revenge was Jin Shi. If even Jin Shi couldn't stop Shang Jiao, then what awaited the Heavenly Wind tribe was complete destruction. Hence, even though many people were secretly dissatisfied with Jin Shi's coercion towards Shang Jiao back then, there were still many old gold-rank magi who knelt outside the palace with the golden dome and prayed in panic. Ancestor God, please let Jin Shi break through the Supreme Being realm and become a witch god. Don't let Shang Jiao come back. He's crazy, he's a witch that will only bring destruction. Boom. Perhaps it was because of the praying, or perhaps it was because of Jin Wu's death in battle, but the news of Shang Jiao's return had greatly stimulated Jin Shi. Jin Shi, who originally still had a few decades before he could step into the Supreme Being realm, suddenly exploded with a terrifying wave of consciousness in the entire palace. Then, this wave of consciousness went deep into the heavens and earth, deep into the starry sky, and deep into countless lands of the sorcerer tribe. Boom! The Heavenly Way sensed it, and at this moment there was a huge roar. Then, a straight golden pillar of light broke through the dome of the palace and broke through the entire heavens and earth. In the broken heavens and earth, there stood a dazzling golden figure. It was a handsome young man with golden hair. Tens of thousands of years had not left a single mark on his body. The merciless passage of time had not worn away his arrogance. Shang Jiao is just a lowly slave. So what if you have the golden divine treasure? Back then, I could trample you under my feet like a dog. Back then, I could humiliate the person you loved to death. I could crush her tombstone in front of you. Now I can also trample you under my feet. You bastard, you know the huge gap between you and me. My husband Jin Wu died so tragically. You must avenge him. As Jin Shi broke through the sorcerer realm and rushed out of the palace, a woman in a palace dress suddenly appeared outside the palace. She cried and threw herself into Jin Shi's arms. This woman's body was bloated and her size was frightening. Her face was very old and wrinkled. Tens of thousands of years had not been able to defeat Jin Shi, but he had defeated this woman. This made Jin Shi feel extremely annoyed. He had just come out of seclusion, and when he heard that his only son had been killed, Jin Shi was instantly furious. A loud slap landed on the woman's face. Go away. What did I say? Before I broke through to the sorcerer realm, I would not let Jin Wu go out and cause trouble. Now, he died in the hands of my bastard brother. This is the greatest shame of my life. The woman covered her face and looked in disbelief at the husband she had missed for thousands of years. Suddenly, she roared hysterically, Jin Shi, you're heartless. If I hadn't taken a fancy to you back then, would my father have nurtured you? He taught you witchcraft and helped you become the sorcerer realm? Now that your son has been killed, you don't care? Xin, I am old and weak. How dare you abandon me? Slap. What answered the woman was another resounding slap to the face. This slap was exceptionally heavy, causing the woman to spit out blood from her mouth. Jin Shi's expression was cold. He looked at the woman with disgust and said, Of course I will avenge Jin Wu. But since you know you are old and weak, why do you still come out and make a fool of yourself? Now that I have broken through to the sorcerer realm, I have a long future ahead of me. Do you still want me to look at your ugly old face like before? Here you go. Other than sorcerer gods of the same level, if other sorcerer gods called him by his name, it would be the greatest disrespect to him. These few grand magi from Kindred's golden palace could no longer hold themselves back. They shouted out together and were about to rush onto the battleship and arrest the crazy man who spoke so rudely. Scram! On the golden warship, a golden figure that was as bright as the sun and moon suddenly stepped out. With just a casual wave of his hand, the entire sky above Little Shaman City was already swirling with a terrifying spiritual storm. Jin Shi, you are Jin Shi. You have also stepped into the supreme realm and become a sorcerer god. The few gold-ranked magi's faces changed drastically. They had been cultivating in Kindred's golden palace all year round, so they could naturally feel the terrifying spiritual fluctuation of the blonde youth and the golden treasure in his body that was like a sun furnace. This was the symbol of a sorcerer god. What, Jin Shi has broken through to the sorcerer god? Gongzhu, didn't you say that he still has 100 years to break through? Yi Fei's face was very ugly. Originally, everything was going smoothly for him in the sorcerer tribe. Not only did he join Kindred's golden palace, but he also subdued Gongzhu and made him a sorcerer traitor. Who would have thought that Jin Shi had broken through to the sorcerer god decades earlier? Not only Yi Fei's face changed, but even Grand Magi Gongzhu widened his eyes in shock. He hurriedly sent a spiritual message to Yi Fei, Big Brother, while Jin Shi's attention is still on Little Shaman City and he hasn't discovered us, we should hurry back to Kindred's golden palace and escape. Hurry up and run back to Roland's golden palace. With how much Grand Sovereign Chen Liang values you, he will definitely stop Jin Shi from attacking you. Yi Fei glanced at Gongzhu blandly, but didn't say anything. He had finally gotten rid of Chen Liang's surveillance. If he returned now, wouldn't that be like sending a sheep into a tiger's mouth? At least, before Gong Zhu finds out what Chun Liang is trying to do to me, I can't easily return to Kindred's Golden Palace. But if I don't return, how can I deal with a sorcerer god like Jin Shi? Yi Fei had mixed feelings. He increasingly felt that he wasn't powerful enough. If he wasn't a grand magus but a sorcerer god, why would he be afraid of Jin Shi and Chun Liang? He would even dare to fight his way back to the impregnable pass of the human tribe. But unfortunately, he didn't have that kind of power now. After all, the golden treasure only gave him a chance to break through to the sorcerer god level. But Yi Fei didn't have the chance to break through to the sorcerer god level. Jin Shi had already broken through to the sorcerer god level before him. Boom! Sensing Jin Shi's terrifying spiritual power, which swept across the entire city and was comparable to that of a true god or a true devil, Yi Fei couldn't help but feel frightened. Without reaching the Supreme Being level, one would never know how terrifying the Supreme Being level was. At least for now, if Yi Fei faced the furious Jin Shi, he would definitely die. Shang Jiu, my B***starred brother, I know you're hiding here. What? You have the ability to kill my son, but don't you have the ability to face me? Well, after all, you're a B***starred half-human half-sorcerer. Back then, when I humiliated the woman you loved most to death, you didn't say a word. You could only be a coward. Are you going to hide like a coward? Ha ha! Jin Shi cursed viciously. In Yi Fei's heart, there was also a sudden surge of anger and violence. It was as if there was a thought in his mind that made him throw caution to the wind and rush out to perish together with Jin Shi. Yi Fei's face instantly darkened. He knew that Shang Jiu's emotions were affecting him. Now that his enemy was right in front of him, it was obvious that Shang Jiu's emotions had been completely ignited. Even though Yi Fei had tried his best to suppress them, when he saw Jin Shi and heard Jin Shi's vicious insults, Shang Jiu's emotions finally affected Yi Fei. Jin Shi. Shang Jiu's voice suddenly sounded from Yi Fei's mouth. It was violent, crazy, and filled with unforgettable hatred. Even though Shang Jiu had died long ago, died in the world, and died in his memory. But in the face of his lifelong enemy, Shang Jiu's emotions and hatred were still on Yi Fei's body. His anger had completely erupted. Chapter 1882. That's not right. You're not a bastard, but why do you have Shang Jiu's aura on you? Jin Shi traversed the entire little shaman city in a single step and appeared in the void outside the black warship. What he used was the greater void steps, and the most complete version at that. It was even more exquisite than Shang Jiu's. But soon after, Jin Shi used the sorcerer god's powerful spiritual senses to sense that something was wrong with Yi Fei's aura. Since things had already progressed to this stage, there was no point in hiding anymore. Yi Fei coldly stepped forward and stared at Jin Shi fearlessly. That's right, I'm not Shang Jiu. However, I have Shang Jiu's hatred on me. Jin Shi, one day I'll make sure you die in my hands. Yi Fei did this not only for Shang Jiu, but also for himself. From Shang Jiu's emotional reaction, Yi Fei knew that Shang Jiu still had a final card up his sleeve. Shang Jiu's emotions had already merged with his. If he did not kill Jin Shi would become his stepping stone on the path of martial arts. The biggest obstacle to the peak. It might even give birth to an inner demon. The only way was to kill Jin Shi and complete Shang Jiu's revenge. Only then would Shang Jiu's influence on him be completely erased. Jin Shi's face was filled with shock. So that means that my bastard brother is really dead? Otherwise, he wouldn't have given you his golden treasure. He wants to use you to avenge him? That bastard can dream on. Shut your stinking mouth. Yi Fei suddenly roared. Although Shang Jiu was a magus and had the cruel side of a magus, at the same time, Shang Jiu was also a true man with feelings, a true hero with an indomitable spirit. Jin Shi's words had undoubtedly infuriated Yi Fei. Boom. Then, a terrifying ball of sorcerer light turned into a terrifying godly wolf. It swallowed the sun and the moon, and viciously lunged towards Yi Fei. Secret void technique: divine wolf swallows the sun and moon. Jin Shi's expression was cold, harsh, and vaguely cruel. After knowing that Yi Fei wasn't Shangjiu, he didn't even bother to talk to Yi Fei. He didn't even bother to look at Yi Fei. The terrifying god wolf had already opened its mouth, as if it was going to swallow the sun and the moon. He wanted to swallow Yi Fei and the black warship into the void and kill them. Yi Fei's heart sank. Jin Shi's ruthlessness and decisiveness had exceeded his expectations. However, this was also the reason why Jin Shi was able to stand out among the thousands of gold-ranked shamans and become the shaman god. Yi Fei did not dare to be careless. He knew that if he were to fight Jin Shi head-on, he would only die. At the core of the warship was the sorcerer god's altar. As the name suggested, this was the altar where the sorcerer god cast spells. As Grand Monarch Qinliang's ship, the black warship naturally had an altar like this as well. At the same time, this altar was the black warship's strongest point of defense. Worker, start the warship. We'll retreat immediately. Boom. The black warship suddenly erupted with intense divine light. As Yi Fei's gold divine treasure fused with the altar, it provided the warship with power. Worker Zhu's Grand Shaman also went all out and activated the warship's power with all his might. The warship rapidly retreated. As it passed through layers of the void, it erupted with terrifying black light that resembled a black hole. It actually turned around and tore the void divine wolf released by Jin Shi into pieces. Bastard, you're courting death. All of a sudden, Jin Shi's enraged roar came from the void. He made a grabbing motion in the air, and the stars that were originally floating in the starry sky suddenly felt a strong gravitational force. Countless shooting stars turned into flames, crushing the void from the starry sky, and then from the void, they continuously crashed into the black battleship like meteors. What? Worker Zhu's Grand Shaman was the first to succumb. He had already been severely injured by Yi Fei. Now, he was facing the sorcerer god's attack. Even though the black warship had a Grand Shaman restriction, Worker Zhu was still severely injured on the spot. However, Jin Shi's attack would not stop because of Worker Zhu's injury. He raised one hand toward the starry sky and continuously grabbed at the void. In Jin Shi's hands, the great void technique suddenly erupted with boundless power. Meteors after meteors with terrifying flames burned through the sky as if they were going to destroy the world. The power of the meteors caused many low-level sorcerers in Little Sorcerer City to vomit blood. No one knew how many of them were accidentally injured and smashed into pieces by the falling meteors. Yi Fei's expression suddenly became very grave. Without breaking through to the supremacy realm, he would never know how terrifying a sorcerer god at the supremacy realm was. Even though he now had the combat strength of an upper-level martial god, it was still difficult for him to resist Jin Shi, who was at the sorcerer god realm. This was under the protection of Grand Venerable Chun Liang's black warship. Without this warship, he and Worker Zhu would probably only be able to hold on for 10 breaths of time before being killed by Jin Shi in an instant. What should I do? If I give up on Worker Zhu, detonate the black warship, and escape with all my strength, I might still have a chance to escape from Jin Shi. However, if I do that, all my efforts in the sorcerer tribe will be in vain. Looking at Yi Fei standing on the altar hesitantly, Jin Shi's eyes flashed with cold mockery and strong disdain. You're just a bastard. Even if Shangjiu gave you the battle sorcerer god realm and the golden divine treasure in front of me, a bastard like you will only end up dead. Boom! The moment the word dead left his mouth, Jin Shi finally lost his last bit of patience. With a loud roar, the boundless power of the void suddenly turned into the power of the stars. Rumble! Then, the void behind Jin Shi suddenly split open, and thousands of burning stars crazily fell down. Yi Fei was horrified to discover that Jin Shi had used a sorcerer's spell to refine thousands of stars in order to deal with Shang Jiao. This kind of power far surpassed that of an upper-level martial god. Even if he had the battle sorcerer body, if he was hit by these stars, he would definitely die. I can't hesitate any longer. Jin Shi, you've gone too far. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in Yi Fei's ears. Then, the altar he was standing on suddenly erupted with dazzling sorcerer light, quickly forming an ancient stone portal. Bang! The stone portal opened instantly, and Grand Monarch Qin Liang's majestic figure stepped out of the stone portal. He gently pointed at the falling stars in the sky. Whoosh! Facing the power of Grand Monarch Qin Liang's finger, all of the stars came to a halt, and then turned around to smash towards Jin Shi's true form at an even faster speed. Jin Shi was furious. The dazzling golden light on his body was suddenly replaced by a layer of petrified skin, instantly turning him into a terrifying stone golem king. He shattered the void and countless stars that came close to him. Qin Liang, how dare you stop me? Sorcerer spell, void star shatter. Chapter 1883. Sorcery, Mirror Reflection. Facing the incoming debris of the stars, Grand Monarch Qin Liang's body suddenly erupted with a layer of silver light, forming a special mirror that shook violently in front of him. Instantly, the debris of the stars released by Jin Shi all froze. Then, as if time had reversed, they shot back at Jin Shi at an even faster speed. Jin Shi's furious roar came from the end of the shattered void. That roar was like the howl of a wolf, like the wrath of a fiend god, shattering the void and causing the starlight to crumble. A huge void hand appeared between heaven and earth, grabbing the sun and the moon and condensing starlight. Qin Liang, this has nothing to do with you. They're just disciples. I can compensate you with 10 or even 100 of them, as long as you let me kill that bastard and avenge my son. Sorcery, light of the void. The condensed star brilliance suddenly turned into a black ray of void light, which was struck by Jin Shi once again. It tore Little Shaman City into two halves from the middle. Who knew how many low-rank shamans had their bodies destroyed by this spell, leaving behind only blood dripping everywhere? Grand Monarch Qin Liang was instantly enraged. He was a refugee and didn't have the support of a large tribe. To him, these ordinary refugee shamans were his foundation. They were the key to buying people's hearts and recruiting them. But now Jin Shi dared to kill them wantonly. Intense rage caused a terrifying psychic storm to erupt from Grand Monarch Qin Liang's body. In the blink of an eye, he had become a terrifying stone giant just like Jin Shi. His furious stone fingers, which carried deathly silent light, suddenly pierced through the void around Jin Shi. It shattered. Qin Liang's furious voice came from the void. Jin Shi, you've gone too far. You've just become a sorcerer god, but you dared to kill my disciples and the innocent. I have no choice but to fight today. Shangjiu, Gongzhu, return to my golden palace first. I'll talk to you after I kill this bastard Jin Shi. As Qin Liang spoke, he waved his hand again. His boundless mental energy had already formed a frightening suction force. Not only did it cause the Black Warship to fuse with him, but it also caused the Black Warship to become one with him. On the altar, Yi Fei and Gong Zhu's bodies were restrained and sent into the teleportation gate Qin Liang had built. Qin Liang, how dare you! In the void, Jin Shi's furious roar could be heard. Unfortunately, in front of Qin Liang, who had become one with the Black Warship, even if Jin Shi was the sorcerer god, he could not get past Qin Liang and hurt Yi Fei. He could only vent all his anger on Qin Liang. Since you want to oppose me, Qin Liang, then I'll kill you. Then I'll step over your corpse, kill Shangjiu, and destroy your golden palace. Where is my battleship? 'Boom!' 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 The huge golden warship instantly appeared in front of Jin Shi, wrapping him up like layers of armor. Soon, two metal giants, one gold and one black, appeared in the sky and started fighting violently under the starry sky of the lonely mountain ridge. Yi Fei could also clearly see the horror of the witch god's battle through the stone door. Only then did he realize that the black warship was not only the witch god's vehicle, but also his weapon in battle. After all, the witch god's physical body was weak. Therefore, building a strong warship was something that many witch gods had to do. At the same time, the witch god's terrifying combat strength shocked Yi Fei greatly. Fortunately, I didn't fight Jin Shi to the death. Even if I had the combat strength of an upper-level martial god, I wouldn't be a match for the witch god. After all, the witch god and the earthly venerate were the most powerful beings in this world. What was worse was that Yi Fei had offended two witch gods at the same time. Moreover, Grand Venerate Chunliang's timely arrival made Yi Fei even more certain that Grand Venerate Chunliang had been secretly watching him all this time. It's over. We're done for. As if offending Jin Shi wasn't enough, the fact that the Grand Monarch rushed here so quickly and spared no effort to protect you shows that he's up to no good. Gong Zhu wasn't an idiot. He had suspected that Grand Monarch Chen Liang was going to do something to Yi Fei. Now that Grand Venerate Chen Liang had reacted so quickly, Gong Zhu's face turned pale. He secretly regretted signing the witch oath with Yi Fei and becoming a witch traitor. Big brother, why don't we run away while Grand Venerate Chen Liang and Jin Shi are still fighting? 10 days is enough for us to escape into the starry sky and hide. Grand Venerate Gong Zhu sent a voice transmission in fear. After all, he was currently tied to Yi Fei. If Yi Fei was done for, he would only die a more miserable death. At this moment, Yi Fei's mood was also very nervous. If Jin Shi was a ferocious wolf, then Chen Liang was a cunning tiger. No matter which side he fell into, he would be at a disadvantage. What should I do? Run away? That won't do. He had finally managed to sneak into the witch tribe and become a member of the witch tribe. If he ran away now, not only would his efforts be in vain, but he would also lose his last chance to rescue Zhao Yu. But if he continued to stay, even if he managed to stop Jin Shi, Chen Liang could still kill him at any time. If only I could find out what Chen Liang is trying to do to me. Then, I would be able to deal with him as I see fit and think of a way to deal with him. Thinking of this, Yi Fei suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Why didn't I think of that? Since Chen Liang refused to reveal anything, wouldn't I investigate it myself? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Yi Fei couldn't help but look at Chen Liang's golden palace. That was where Chen Liang cultivated and was also the safest place in the entire golden palace. If Chen Liang had any secrets, he would definitely hide them in that golden palace. Gong Zhu, you just said that the battle between the witch gods will last for 10 days. Is that true? Yi Fei asked in a low voice. Big brother, I'm not sure. But it's not the first time that a battle between the witch gods has broken out in our witch tribe. It can last for several months or at least 10 days before a victor is decided. We can take advantage of this time to run away. Gong Zhu perked up, thinking that Yi Fei had finally thought of a plan. Thought of it. Yi Fei was speechless. Do I look like someone who's afraid of death? As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. We can run away for a while, but can we run away for a lifetime? While Chen Liang and Jin Shi are fighting fiercely, take me to Chen Liang's golden palace immediately. Gong Zhu sucked in a breath of cold air. What? You want to sneak into the great sage's golden palace? You're a lunatic. Do you have guts? You actually came up with such a crazy idea. You know that if the great sage finds out, we'll immediately die without a burial place. Yi Fei sneered. Didn't you say that Chen Liang and Jin Shi will fight for 10 days? What are you afraid of in such a long time? Even if there's a restriction inside, I can think of a way to deal with it. Gong Zhu's scalp went numb. He stared at Yi Fei as if he was looking at a lunatic. Emperor Yi, you're really crazy. The Golden Palace is such an important place. Do you think the great sage doesn't have any precautions? Let me tell you, not only is there a restriction inside the Golden Palace, there are also at least 2 great sages, most trusted golden shamans, outside at all times. They're in charge of guarding. You won't be able to get in. Yi Fei was stunned. Only now did he know that sneaking into Chen Liang's Golden Palace seemed to be much more difficult than he had imagined. But even so, Yi Fei still decided to give it a try. Chapter 1884. Humph. Stop dreaming. You won't be able to get past the Golden Great Magi who are guarding this place. Gong Zhu finally got the chance to mock Yi Fei when he was defeated. Yi Fei wasn't angry when he heard that. Instead, he stabbed Gong Zhu's thigh when no one was paying attention. The latter started to bleed profusely and couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. Big brother, what happened to you? Why are you bleeding so much? Don't worry, I'll help you back. Hurry up and treat your wounds. Yi Fei cried out even more miserably than Gong Zhu. At this moment, he was filled with concern as he picked up Gong Zhu and dashed towards Gong Zhu's palace. The gold wizards along the way did not stop him, nor did they take him seriously. All of them were fully focused on the battle scene behind the stone door. After all, the battle between the wizard gods was of great help to their understanding of the more profound wizard spells. Improve. Yi, you're so cruel. I didn't offend you. Why did you stab me for no reason? Gong Zhu roared furiously in the palace. Yi Fei calmly called out Xiao Chao and then had Xiao Chao calmly take out the deity's striking whip. Gong Zhu immediately became obedient and hurriedly smiled. You're my older brother. Don't mention stabbing me once. Even if you stab me 10 more times, it's still my duty as your younger brother. Yi Fei patted Gong Zhu's shoulder with satisfaction. Second brother, I didn't misjudge you. Don't worry, I won't stab you 10 times. I only want you to go to Chen Liang's Golden Palace and find a way to attract the attention of the 2 great magi guarding the palace. What? You've already thought of a way to break through the great magi's Golden Palace? Gong Zhu's face turned pale. In shock, the thigh that was stabbed by Yi Fei started to bleed profusely again. Gong Zhu was so frightened that he hurriedly used his magi to heal himself. While Gong Zhu was healing himself, Yi Fei once again took out the lazy Ling Siki from the beast mark space. He said, Ling Siki, whether we can sneak in this time depends on you. Little brother, what do you want me to do? Ling Siki was innocent, but that did not mean that she was not sensible. As a demigod, Ling Siki was also a very powerful helper. Of course, in Yi Fei's eyes, Ling Siki's strongest point was not her cultivation level, but her ability to conceal herself that even Xiao Chao could not detect. This was also the most miraculous aspect of the 10 spirits' creation heavenly technique. It seized the fortune of heaven and earth, and could change its size at will. Immediately, Yi Fei instructed Ling Siki in a low voice. Then, he took out the Magic Crystal Pagoda and entered the Magic Crystal Pagoda with Xiao Chao. Ling Siki, on the other hand, remained outside. She put the Magic Crystal Pagoda into her bosom. Suddenly, her body swayed. She had already activated the 10 Spirits Creation Heavenly Arts Creation chapter. With a whoosh, she turned from a 10-year-old girl to a tiny little thing the size of a grain of rice. She even jumped up onto the Grand Shaman's head. Ling Ling was like a goddess of war. She commanded Gong Zhu, Grand Shaman Gong Zhu, we will go to Roland's Golden Palace now. Think of a way to attract the attention of those 2 guards and cover me as I run into Roland's Golden Palace. You guys. When Gong Zhu saw Ling Siki, who had turned into the size of a grain of rice, his face instantly became very shocked. Such a method was simply beyond his understanding. This was also the most miraculous aspect of the 10 spirits' creation heavenly technique. It could change its size at will. Moreover, not only could Ling Siki transform herself, she could also transform with the items on her body. That was how domineering the 10 spirits creation heavenly technique was. Thinking back, Yi Fei was also shocked when he saw Ling Siki use such a method for the first time, let alone the Grand Shaman Gong Zhu, who did not have any knowledge of martial arts. Helplessly, the Grand Shaman Gong Zhu, who had become the second in command from the elder brother, could only let the little girl stand on his head and order him around. He had no choice but to drag his injured leg that was still bleeding and hurried to Chen Liang's golden palace. Gong Zhu's miserable appearance immediately startled the 2 gold-rank shamans who were guarding the door. Gong Zhu, why are you not recuperating in the palace? What are you doing here? Shut up. I, Gong Zhu, am the trusted subordinate of the great sage. How can an ordinary injury stop my love and respect for the great sage? I will wait here for the great sage to return and personally thank the great sage for saving my life. Gong Zhu was full of righteousness, but his heart was weak. The 2 gold-rank shamans at the door also showed a disdainful look and sneered rudely. Gong Zhu, back then you relied on flattery to make the great sage promote you to a grand shaman. What? Now you still want to rely on flattery to make the great sage guide you to break through to the supreme shaman level? Get lost. We don't need a flatterer like you here. You just need to follow the great sage's instructions and keep an eye on Shang Jiu. It didn't matter if they didn't mention it, but once they did, Gong Zhu was indeed touched where it hurt the most. After all, if it weren't for the fact that Chen Liang ordered him to keep an eye on Yi Fei, he wouldn't have ended up like this. As a great gold-rank shaman, not only had he become a traitor, but he had also become the second most powerful man in the palace, who would never be able to rise again. Gong Zhu was infuriated. He didn't even need Yi Fei to tell him what to do. Instead, he burst into a violent rage, and his entire body shone with a dazzling golden light as he shouted, "Shut your damn mouths! You're just 2 watchdogs. What right do you have to laugh at me?" The 2 gold-rank shamans were both startled by Gong Zhu's roar, then they were deeply infuriated. Together they yelled, "Gong Zhu, how dare you scold us? Very well, didn't you want to pretend to be pitiful and win the great sage's sympathy? We'll fulfill your wish and beat him hard." Both of them were the great sage's trusted subordinates. They didn't like each other, so it was inevitable for them to fight for the great sage's favor. At this moment, seeing Gong Zhu making trouble, these 2 gold-rank shamans simply rushed up together, surrounded Gong Zhu, and beat him up. Poor Gong Zhu was severely injured by Yi Fei not long ago, and then he was injured by Jin Shi. When he came back, he was even stabbed by Yi Fei with a sword. Now, he was being beaten up by 2 gold-rank shamans. He was pressed to the ground on the spot, and his nose was bleeding. He was so angry that he almost burst into tears. "What sin did I, Gong Zhu? Do you have to do this to me, Yi Fei? Please stop beating me." The 2 gold-rank shamans turned a deaf ear to Gong Zhu's words. They didn't say anything, but kept beating Gong Zhu with all their strength. They swore to teach Gong Zhu a lesson. Therefore, they didn't notice that when they were beating Gong Zhu badly, a grain-sized little human girl had quietly run past them. With another breath, she rushed into Chen Liang's most important place, the Golden Palace. In here, Ling Siki didn't dare to run around. Instead, she hesitantly asked Yi Fei, "Little Guogua, I'm here. What should we do now?" "Don't move. Wait for Xiao Chao to sense the restrictive spells of the Supreme Magus. Dragon Turtle, Xiao Chao, get ready." Yi Fei had prepared for this. Chapter 1885. To the left. To the right. Wrong. Go back and continue to the left. Be careful. The one in front is not a restriction but a trap. Don't touch it. Great Sovereign Chen Liang is indeed a cunning old fox. He set up so many witchcraft traps even in the safest place, the Golden Palace. Fortunately, we have Xiao Qiao. Yi Fei rubbed Xiao Qiao's ponytail and praised him. Squeak! Xiao Qiao was very proud. Under the effect of the heaven and earth spiritual eye, no matter what kind of energy it was, it couldn't escape Xiao Cao's senses. Although great venerable Chen Liang was experienced and had set up layers of witchcraft restrictions in the Golden Palace, they were still seen through by Xiao Qiao. Yi Fei was so happy that he promised Xiao Qiao on the spot that in the future, Xiao Qiao could eat as many magic crystals as she wanted in the Magic Crystal Pagoda. Xiao Cao's eyes were instantly filled with generosity. The only thing that spoiled the mood was the black tortoise that always followed them. It kept poking its head out and looking around, afraid that Yi Fei and Xiao Qiao didn't notice it. Yi Fei pretended not to see it. The dragon turtle was not angry. It just shamelessly rubbed against Yi Fei's trouser leg. Because it rubbed too hard, it accidentally broke Yi Fei's trouser leg. This made Yi Fei very depressed. He could only promise to share some of the magic crystals to get rid of the shameless black turtle. The turtle. At this time, Ling Siki, who had turned into a small person, happened to be guided by Xiao Qiao's spiritual eye. She successfully avoided the layers of witchcraft restrictions and traps and ran to the throne where great sovereign Chen Liang was sitting. Then, her body returned to normal. Yi Fei, Xiao Qiao, and the dragon turtle walked out of the Magic Crystal Pagoda. Sister Xiao Qiao, is the sorcerer god's treasure really here? Ling Siki looked around curiously. She found that although the Golden Palace was full of restrictions, it was very simple overall. Not to mention treasures, there were not even many magic crystals. Xiao Qiao's expression was very certain. He patted his body like a little adult and pointed to the ground of the throne. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He suddenly pushed the throne back. Boom! A dazzling underground golden palace appeared in front of Yi Fei. Only then did Yi Fei realize that the golden palace above was just a facade. Chen Liang's real golden palace was actually hidden in another space. However, this was very much in line with Chen Liang's crafty style. With Ling Siki protecting Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle, Yi Fei was the first to enter the palace. He realized that this underground palace was very luxurious. Looks like Chen Liang looks poor and looks like the leader of a refugee sorcerer, but deep down, he is just like those noble sorcerer gods from the big tribes. Seeking pleasure, selfish and self-serving. Being poor and kind is just a way for him to win people's hearts. Stepping on the stairs that were purely made of luxurious gold, what came into view were countless artificial mountains, ponds, and pavilions. Yi Fei even saw magic crystals hanging in the air, twisting and turning to form resplendent spirit dragons. It made the golden palace even more beautiful, like a heavenly palace. Roar! Seeing so many magic crystals in front of him, almost transforming into a real spiritual dragon, the dragon turtle trembled in excitement. It stretched its neck out and habitually bit the nearest magic crystal with its black mouth. Yi Fei's face darkened. Xiao Qiao, tie up Big Black's mouth. If it dares to eat it secretly, we'll throw it out and sell it. Little brother, can you sell the dragon turtle? How much? I'll buy it. Ling Siki had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Her little face was as red as an apple. The dragon turtle's face turned ashen as it was about to bite down with its black beak. It suddenly opened its beak, but it did not bite down on the magic crystal. Instead, it bit down on a scroll not too far away. It held the scroll in its beak and wagged its tail madly, as if asking for a reward from Yi Fei. Yi Fei and Xiao Qiao's faces darkened. However, when he saw what the dragon turtle had brought over, Yi Fei's expression changed drastically. The shaman's script on the scroll read Battle Shaman. It's actually the Battle Shaman that Shang Jiu taught me. That's strange. Chen Liang is clearly on the path of the sorcerer. How could he have the cultivation method of the Battle Shaman? Yi Fei quickly picked up the scroll and studied it carefully. The more he looked, the more shocked he became. He realized that this battle shaman was even more complete than the one that Shang Jiu taught him. Shang Jiu's battle shaman only recorded the cultivation method of the sorcerer god. However, the battle shaman that Chen Liang had mastered was actually the cultivation method of the sorcerer's supremacy, which was the cultivation method of the heavenly venerable. The battle shaman is actually the cultivation method of the heavenly venerable. Yi Fei's heart was filled with shock. However, he was soon shocked by another thing. That was the mountain of battle techniques on the ground where the dragon turtle had picked up the scroll. That's right, battle technique. Battle techniques that only battle shamans could use. Moreover, all of them were gold-level sorcerer battle techniques. However, the scrolls that recorded these battle techniques were all very tattered, as if they had been through countless years. Yi Fei didn't dare to touch them carefully. This was because the slightest bit of force could cause these scrolls to shatter and be eroded by the wind. Chen Liang would then be able to see through them when he returned. The dragon turtle was also lucky. The scroll that it had picked up just happened to be the one that was in the best condition. Yi Fei carefully memorized the heavenly venerable content on the scroll, which was the specific method to condense the true body of the ancestral sorcerer. Then, he carefully put the scroll back in its original position. Then, his gaze involuntarily focused on another throne in the Roland's Golden Palace. Obviously, that was where great venerable Chen Liang had truly cultivated. There were still a large number of scrolls piled up around the high platform. However, these scrolls belonged to the sorcerer race. Yi Fei even saw many traces of golden blood on some of the scrolls. Clearly, great venerable Chen Liang had used underhanded means to obtain these scrolls. However, the most eye-catching thing was, it was a stone scroll placed on the throne. That scroll was exceptionally heavy. Although it was placed lightly on the throne, when Yi Fei picked it up, he felt as if he wasn't picking up a scroll, but a heavy mountain. Then, a sorcerer cultivation memory that originally belonged to Shang Jiu appeared in Yi Fei's mind. Shang Jiu once entered some ancient ruins and saw this kind of stone scroll. This is a scroll drawn with the stone skin of the sorcerer god. This is a method that only the ancient sorcerers could use. The ancient era. Gods and demons were everywhere. Even heavenly venerables weren't considered strong. Only in that era could they be so extravagant as to directly strip the sorcerer god of his stone skin and use it to record. The strongest in the ancient era were the battle shamans. Sorcerers and artifact sorcerers were actually the servants of the battle shamans. Sorcerers were only responsible for offering sacrifices and healing, while artifact sorcerers were responsible for refining sorcerer artifacts and taming battle beasts. How is this possible? Chapter 1886. However, after thinking about it carefully, Yi Fei felt that it was normal for battle shamans to be powerful. After all, this was a world where martial arts reigned supreme. Only martial arts were the strongest. The battle techniques of battle shamans were actually another form of martial arts, spiritual martial arts, and battle shamans. They were actually shamans who cultivated spiritual martial arts. However, for some reason, the powerful battle shamans completely declined in the shaman tribe. Instead, the originally weak spell shamans and weapon shamans ruled over the shaman tribe. However, the strength of spell shamans and weapon shamans was only reflected before warriors comprehended the laws. Once warriors comprehended the laws, they would immediately be above spell shamans and weapon shamans. This was similar to the alchemists and weapon masters among human warriors. Even though they could refine all sorts of powerful pills and weapons, their personal combat abilities were generally very weak. They could not be compared to warriors who only fought for the sake of battle. From this, Yi Fei deduced that spell shamans and weapon shamans were actually equivalent to the alchemists and weapon masters among warriors. Only battle shamans belonged to the shaman tribe. They were battle shamans who were born for battle. After realizing this, Yi Fei could not help but have a strong interest in this stone scroll. He began to focus his mind and diligently decipher the words on it. These words were all spiritual words imprinted by the immemorial shamans using their powerful spiritual energy. They were very powerful and very difficult to decipher. If not for the fact that Yi Fei possessed the golden treasure trove, an ordinary grand shaman would feel dizzy just by looking at these words. They might even suffer a backlash from the spiritual words on the scroll. With no other choice, Yi Fei could only awaken the undying sword soul that had been dormant for a long time to infinitely increase his comprehension. Only then did he feel that he could somewhat understand the hidden spiritual meaning of these immemorial words. Just like this, Yi Fei did not move. He only held the immemorial scroll in his hands and continued to study and comprehend it. Very quickly, 10 days passed by quietly. Yi Fei's originally calm expression gradually turned grave, then pale and finally ashen. I see. This scroll was actually written by an immemorial spell shaman in the immemorial era. The thing that this wizard regretted the most in his life was that he did not have enough talent to become a powerful battle wizard. He could only be reduced to an inconspicuous existence in the wizard tribe. However, this person did not have enough talent in martial arts, but he is a genius who cultivates evil sorcery. Thus, this genius spent his entire life researching an extremely evil shaman spell called Spirit Shifting Technique. It could actually take over the body of a battle shaman and turn himself from a magical shaman into the most powerful battle shaman. Moreover, this sorcery wasn't about snatching the other party's divine treasures, but about using one's own divine treasures. That was because he wanted to devour his opponent's divine treasures. This way, not only would he be able to retain his cultivation base, he would also be able to perfectly transform himself from a wizard to the most powerful battle wizard. This is what Chen Liang wants to do to me. Boom! After reading this paragraph, Yi Fei couldn't help but erupt with a strong killing intent. Yi Fei had originally guessed that Chen Liang's intention might be to steal his golden divine treasure, but Yi Fei quickly dismissed this idea. After all, the greatest use of the golden divine treasure was to allow a wizard to have the possibility of breaking through the supremacy realm and becoming a wizard god. Chen Liang was already a wizard god, so there was no need for him to steal someone else's golden divine treasure. It wasn't until he saw this immemorial scroll that Yi Fei realized Chen Liang's true intention. He actually wanted to use his battle wizard path to transform from a weak wizard into the most powerful battle wizard. Hearing Yi Fei's words, Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle were very angry. Xiao Qiao was so angry that he picked up the god lashing whip and was about to go out and settle the score with Chen Liang. At this moment, Ling Siki suddenly thought of something and looked at Yi Fei strangely. Strange, if Supreme Chen Liang wants to take over little Guoguo's body, why hasn't he done anything yet? Instead, he's protecting us with all his might? This is where I'm the most cunning and astute person. Although the witchcraft recorded in this immemorial scroll is evil and strange, it also has an obvious shortcoming, and that is, the realm of the caster after the fusion will also be the realm of the caster. Yi Fei sneered. Ling Siki said in surprise, so, if Supreme Chen Liang takes over little Guoguo's body, his realm will fall from wizard god to grand wizard? That's right. That's why Supreme Chen Liang didn't do anything to me. He only asked Gong Zhu to secretly monitor me. If I'm not wrong, Supreme Chen Liang intends to wait until I break through to wizard god before making a move on me and forcibly fuse with my battle wizard body. This way, he won't lose his realm, and it will go smoothly. He will go from wizard to the most powerful battle wizard. The more Yi Fei spoke, the angrier he became. What did he mean by taking him in as a disciple? After all this time, Supreme Chen Liang intended to fatten him up and slaughter him like a pig. However, after understanding Supreme Chen Liang's plan, Yi Fei heaved a sigh of relief. Since Supreme Chen Liang can't bear to part with his wizard god realm, and plans to make a move on me after I break through to wizard god, it means that I'll be safe in the wizard tribe during this period. As long as I can delay until I represent the wizard tribe and marry the god of heaven, maybe I'll be able to get rid of Supreme Chen Liang. Boom! Just as Yi Fei was thinking, the entire Roland's Golden Palace suddenly trembled slightly. Yi Fei's expression changed instantly. This was the signal that he and Gong Zhu had agreed on beforehand. If anything unusual happened outside, or if the battle between Supreme Chen Liang and Jin Shi was about to end, Gong Zhu would find an excuse to anger the guards outside the Roland's Golden Palace and use a big fight to remind him that it was time to retreat. This was also the 10th day since Yi Fei had sneaked into the Roland's Golden Palace. However, Yi Fei didn't expect the battle between Supreme Chen Liang and Supreme Chen Liang to end so quickly. Luckily, Supreme Chen Liang is stalling for time outside. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have known that such a sinister scheme was hidden behind Supreme Chen Liang's kindness. A cold light flashed in Yi Fei's eyes. Then, he looked at the stone scroll in his hand with great pity. This primordial scroll was too heavy. Its weight was equivalent to a star. If such a weight was placed into the space belt would instantly collapse. Even the space of the pagoda wouldn't be able to withstand it. After all, this scroll was made from the skin of the Supreme Witch, and there was an ancient primordial spirit attached to it. The spiritual power of a sorcerer. Yi Fei guessed that this ancient sorcerer was very likely a powerful heavenly venerate. Otherwise, the primordial scroll he left behind wouldn't be so terrifying. The weight of a single spiritual character was comparable to a star. When tens of thousands of characters were combined, that would be tens of thousands of stars. With such a weight, even a supreme witch like Chen Liang wouldn't be able to carry it around, let alone Yi Fei. Therefore, Chen Liang had no choice but to hide such an important primordial scroll in the underground Roland's Golden Palace and set up layers of restrictions to protect this primordial scroll. I reckon that Chen Liang would never have imagined that his spiritual restriction would be useless against the cooperation of Xiao Chao and Ling Siki. It even allowed me to see through his scheme. Xiao Chao, Dragon Turtle, let's go! Chapter 1887. Boom. Outside Little Witch City, the battle between the two sorcerer gods was still going on, but the intensity was obviously not as intense as it was 10 days ago, especially with the destruction of the warships of both sides. Both Chen Liang and Jin Shi had the intention to stop, but neither side was willing to lose face, so they were the first to stop. Thus, the situation was in a stalemate. Both sides were waiting for the other side to be the first to admit defeat and retreat. The attitude of the two sorcerer gods finally allowed the affected Little Witch City to be preserved. However, the battle in Little Witch City gradually subsided, while the battle outside the Roland's Palace became more and more intense. Because he had signed the Sorcerer Oath, he had no choice but to become the biggest sorcerer traitor of the sorcerer race. Even though he was beaten until his nose was bleeding, in order to not be implicated by Yi Fei, Sorcerer Gongzhu could only hold back his tears and fight for his life outside the Roland's Palace, not daring to give the two golden sorcerer guards a chance to discover the abnormality of the Roland's Palace. In these 10 days, in the eyes of the two Roland's Palace guards, Gongzhu seemed to have been reborn, as if he was a different person. In the past, Gongzhu was only good at flattery, but his talent was very ordinary. Otherwise, Gongzhu would not have embarked on the path of combining sorcery and weapon sorcery. Normally, after Gongzhu was beaten once, he would obediently retreat, not daring to come to the Roland's palace to ask for a rebuff. However, for the past few days, Gong Zhu seemed to have taken the wrong medicine. Even though he had been beaten black and blue, and was even stepped on the ground a few days ago, he had lost all his face. If it were any other senior magi, they would have covered their sleeves and left long ago after being humiliated like this. Gong Zhu was still shouting and fighting angrily. When he was kicked down, he would climb up, and when he was slapped, he would cover his face and rush forward. Even the two guards joined forces and beat Gong Zhu until he rolled on the ground a few times. After losing 2 of his front teeth, Gong Zhu jumped up again and spat out blood. He was furious and fighting. Oh my God, what happened to Gong Zhu these few days? Why did he suddenly become so hot-blooded? Could this be the so-called trick of injuring oneself to gain sympathy? The harder Gong Zhu is beaten now, the more sympathy he will get when the great sage returns? How shameless! Gong Zhu, you bootlicker! How can you use such a shameless method? The few gold shamans who were watching the battle cursed angrily. Not only did they not sympathize with Gong Zhu, they even looked at him with disdain. Zhu Gong was so angry that he let out an even angrier roar. He secretly suppressed his anger and said, "I'm not angry. I definitely can't be angry. What do they know? I'm saving myself. If people found out that I had not only become a traitor, but also helped the new human emperor sneak into the Grand Master's palace, the Grand Master would definitely use magic. How could these bastards understand my difficulties after torturing me to the point where I would rather die? However, I've been beaten like a dead dog for the past 10 days. Why hasn't that Yi guy come out yet?" He didn't want to be angry, but as soon as he thought of Yi Fei's seemingly simple smile, the senior shaman of Gongzhou was so angry that black smoke rolled out of his head, and he let out an extremely angry roar. This roar startled the 2 gold shamans again. Then they shouted angrily, "Gongzhou, you've been beaten like a dead dog by us. How dare you still shout? Don't say anything. Continue to beat him to death." While Gongzhou was distracted by his angry roar, the 2 gold-ranked great shamans kicked Gongzhou to the ground and started a new round of crazy punches and kicks. Gongzhou felt like banging his head against the wall and killing himself. "How dare you? I'm a gold-ranked great shaman after all. How dare you push me to the ground and beat me up for 10 consecutive days? Yi, is this what you promised? After becoming a traitor, I can eat and drink well and live like a master every day." Roar. Even though he was being beaten, the senior shaman of Gongzhou was so angry that he let out an extremely angry roar. At this moment, a furious roar suddenly came from the shadow of the palace in the distance. "You too, how dare you beat my good elder brother? Get lost." Boom. A golden cauldron appeared in the distance and smashed towards the face of a gold guard. The gold great shaman's face was distorted and his flesh was badly mangled. Then, a dazzling fist light smashed down and smashed another gold great shaman, causing him to vomit blood and fall back. His entire chest was smashed. A deep bloody hole was blasted in his chest. His face was filled with shock and fear. "It's Shangjiu!" As expected of the great sage's disciple. The Shangjiu is righteous and righteous. He's a true hero who values loyalty. Humph, Gongzhou, this bootlicker, is so lucky to have such a strong brother. Seeing Yi Fei appear and forcefully save Gongzhou, the surrounding gold shamans all gave him a thumbs up and praised Yi Fei for being righteous and responsible. Even Gongzhou, who had been beaten up for 10 days, couldn't help but shed tears of regret when he suddenly saw Yi Fei descend from the sky and defeat the other party. "Brother, you finally came out. Do you know how badly I was beaten up in the past 10 days? I was almost beaten to death." Yi Fei's face was cold as he lifted Gongzhou up from the ground like a rag. He glared at the 2 gold shamans and said, "Today's matter won't be forgotten so easily. Elder brother, let's go and welcome the great sage first. We'll talk about today's revenge later. In the future." Do you really think you're the great sage's disciple? You're really an idiot. The two severely injured gold shamans sneered at the same time. Although they didn't dare to attack Yi Fei, they didn't take Yi Fei seriously from the beginning. After all, those who were ordered to guard the Golden Palace were Chen Liang's absolute confidants. Their status was even higher than Gong Zhu's. Even if Yi Fei brought Gong Zhu to complain to Chen Liang, they wouldn't be afraid at all. When the nearby gold shamans saw that the commotion had ended, they turned their heads and focused their attention on the battle between the sorcerer gods behind the stone door. However, the battle between the sorcerer gods was far less intense than it was a few days ago. Compared to the experienced great sage Chen Liang, Jin Shi, who had just broken through to the sorcerer god level, was weaker in both battle strength and mental strength. After another terrifying confrontation, Jin Shi suddenly controlled the gold warship and retreated. He roared, "Chen Liang, don't think that you can protect that bastard forever. I don't believe that you can do anything to us sorcerer gods. The revenge of killing my son is irreconcilable. Bastard inside, wait for me to come and take your head. Your head." Realizing that he might be suppressed if the battle continued, Jin Shi decisively retreated. He steered the gold warship into the void and flew directly in the direction of the Li Fire's Golden Palace. Obviously, Jin Shi planned to join forces with great sage Li Hua to deal with Chen Liang and kill Yi Fei. Hearing Jin Shi's words through the stone door, Yi Fei's face darkened. Jin Shi was already so terrifying as a sorcerer god. If he joined forces with sorcerer god Li Hua, wouldn't his life be in immediate danger? Gong Zhu was so scared that he sat on the ground again. He sent a voice transmission to Yi Fei, almost begging, "Big brother, let's run. You've caused a disaster. You've offended 3 sorcerer gods at once." Chapter 1888. Shangjiu, quickly come to the palace to see me. Ignoring the other wizards, the first thing Chen Liang did after returning to Roland's palace was to ask Yi Fei to go to Roland's palace. Yi Fei's expression changed. He knew that Jin Shi's threat had shaken Chen Liang's determination to protect him. Could it be that this old fox is planning to attack me in advance? But that's unlikely. If this old fox was willing to give up his wizard god realm, he would have attacked me long ago instead of waiting until now. It seems that there should be some restrictions if he wants to seize my wizard body. Unfortunately, the primordial scroll's spiritual text was too profound. In 10 days, Yi Fei was only able to roughly understand it. By then, Chen Liang and Jin Shi's battle had already ended. However, when Yi Fei thought of the fact that Jin Shi was able to fight against Chen Liang for 10 days straight after breaking through to the Supreme Magus level, Yi Fei's heart sank. Because of Shangjiu, he and Jin Shi had become mortal enemies. The stronger Jin Shi was, the more disadvantageous it was for him. "Shangjiu, do you think I'm afraid of Jin Shi and Li Hua and plan to hand you over?" On the throne, Chen Liang's eyes were cold. Due to the perfect cooperation of Xiao Chao and Ling Siki, as well as Gong Zhu's trick, Chen Liang didn't discover his secret at all. Yi Fei had discovered it long ago. Yi Fei didn't hesitate. He directly cupped his hands and said, "Disciple doesn't dare. Disciple is just thinking about how to defeat Jin Shi and share the burden for Master and Roland's palace." Chen Liang's eyes flashed with a strange light. He nodded slightly and said, "It seems that I've wronged you. It's good that you can think this way. The key is, have you thought of how to deal with Jin Shi?" Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt that this was a good opportunity to test Chen Liang. He threw caution to the wind and said, "If I want to defeat Jin Shi, I have to break through to Wizard God. At that time, Master and I will join forces. Even if we face Jin Shi and Li Hua at the same time, we won't be afraid. Master, please help me break through to Wizard God." Humph, breaking into the level of Supreme Magus is not that easy. Although you have the gold treasure and you don't need to spend thousands or tens of thousands of years to upgrade your treasure like other magi, the most important thing for breaking into the level of Supreme Magus is not the gold treasure, but the Heaven Master origin. Yi Fei said in a low voice, "Then please grant me the heavenly venerate's essence, Master." Grand Monarch Chen Liang sneered and shook his head. "That's right, with my ability and status, I can indeed allow you to enter the ancestral god temple and obtain the Empyrean source core. But why should I help you? Do you know that every time you enter the ancestral god temple, you have to pay an enormous price?" Jin Shi can become an ancestor god, Your Highness. It was he who disregarded his honor and married Li Hua's daughter, who was several thousand years older than him. What price can you pay to have me help you enter the ancestral god temple and obtain the Empyrean source core? Yi Fei's expression was solemn. Only now did he know that Jin Shi could break through to the sorcerer god level. What he relied on was not his own strength, but the secret help of his father-in-law. "Does Master mean that I should also marry the daughter of a sorcerer god?" Yi Fei's expression immediately turned ugly. But Chen Liang's expression turned even uglier. He shouted angrily, "Bastard, you are the one recognized by us 12 sorcerer gods for marriage. If you marry the daughter of a sorcerer god, how can you marry a heavenly god? However, if you are willing to swear the great sorcerer oath and swear that you will never betray me, I can think of a way. I will send you into the ancestral god temple and obtain the Empyrean source core needed to break through to the sorcerer god level." As he spoke, there was a trace of strangeness in the depths of Chen Liang's eyes, as well as a trace of deeply hidden killing intent. If it were any other time, Yi Fei would never have sensed it. But ever since he saw the immemorial scroll, he understood Chen Liang's scheme. Yi Fei soon heard the thick killing intent in these words. "It seems that Chen Liang has made up his mind to take action against me under the pressure of Jin Shi. If I refuse now, Chen Liang may take action in advance. But if I don't refuse, once I swear the great sorcerer oath, my life and death will still be in Chen Liang's hands." Yi Fei's face was gloomy. He did not dare to speak carelessly. He only cupped his hands and said, "Master, your request is too sudden. Can you give me a few days to think about it?" "You only have 1 day to think about it. When the time comes, if you are still not completely loyal to me, then I have no choice but to chase you out of Roland's Golden Palace and no longer interfere in the grudge between you and Jin Shi. Shangjiu, take care of yourself," Chen Liang said earnestly. He waved his hand, indicating that Yi Fei could leave. Yi Fei heaved a sigh of relief and left with a heavy heart. He did not know that Chen Liang's gaze became more and more gloomy as he looked at his back. A trace of viciousness flashed across his eyes. "Shangjiu, if you know what's good for you, then I can let you die quickly. If you don't, then I will make you wish you were dead. Men, call Zhu Zhu over for this senior." Telling Yi Fei the truth wasn't enough. Chen Liang was even more cunning. He called Gong Zhu in and asked Gong Zhu to report the details of what had happened to Yi Fei during this period of time. Not long after, Gong Zhu also left Roland's Golden Palace with a gloomy face. He went straight to Yi Fei's palace and said in a panic, "Big brother, we are doomed. Master suddenly asked about your whereabouts today. According to my understanding of Master, he is most likely going to do something to you. He has done it long ago. Just now, Chen Liang wanted me to enter the ancestral Magi Palace and break into the Supreme Magus level. This is the signal for him to do it." Yi Fei's face was incomparably cold. Gong Zhu was overjoyed. "What? Master wants you to enter the ancestral god palace? Is that old thing's brain broken? He actually wants you to enter the ancestral god palace and break into the Supreme Magus level. Big brother, this is great news. Great my ass. This old fox is indeed insidious. He wants me to swear the ancestral Magus oath. That way, even if I break into the supreme Magus level, I won't be able to resist him. My life and death will be in his hands. Yi Fei was incomparably angry. Xiao Chao and Ling Siki also looked distressed. Dragon Turtle was already looking around furtively, looking for the best escape route. Only Gong Zhu had an extremely strange expression when he saw Yi Fei and the others acting as if they were facing a great enemy. It's just an oath, big brother. Isn't this what you human emperors are best at? You don't have to pay for tricking us to death. Gong Zhu sighed. Get lost. Do you think I am as shameless as Wang Bai? Wait, Wang Bai. How could I almost forget that our human emperor palace does have a very good tradition. Second brother, thank you. I suddenly thought of a good idea. At least I have an 80% chance of deceiving that old fox. You're an old fox, but I still need your cooperation. Yi Fei looked at Gong Zhu with a very simple and bright smile. However, Gong Zhu felt a chill from head to toe. The last time Yi Fei showed such a smile, he was pressed to the ground and beaten for 10 days. This time, Yi Fei showed such a smile again. Gong Zhu immediately felt his legs go soft. However, before Gong Zhu's legs went soft, Yi Fei had already grabbed him and whispered to him. Seeing that Yi Fei was going to do something bad again and seemed to want to carry forward the good tradition of the human emperor palace, Xiao Chao and Ling Siki were very curious. Even Dragon Turtle quietly straightened its neck and cocked its ears. Chapter 1889. 9 Great Shamans of Shang Dynasty. The Great Sage invites you in. Chen Liang didn't give Yi Fei any chance to delay or escape. Early the next morning, 2 gold great shamans came knocking on the door and invited Yi Fei to the Roland's Golden Palace again. These 2 people were the 2 gold-rank great sorcerers who had worked for Yi Fei violently and had looked down on him. At the same time, they were also his loyal subjects, his true confidant. Yi Fei's heart sank when he saw the 2 of them. Then, he smiled and said, "Thank you for your trouble." The 2 gold great shamans scowled coldly and didn't even bother to say a word to Yi Fei. They just coldly gestured for Yi Fei to walk in front. Yi Fei wasn't angry. There was no need for him to be angry at these 2 people who were about to die. He immediately took a step forward and walked out of his palace. Under the escort of the 2 gold great shamans, he came to Chen Liang's Roland's Golden Palace again. The other gold great shamans along the way also kept pointing at Yi Fei. Some blamed Yi Fei for being too arrogant and offending Jin Shi too ruthlessly. Some took pleasure in his misfortune and felt that Yi Fei, the great sage's disciple, was going to be finished soon. If he hadn't seen through Chen Liang's scheme, such a situation would have been enough to shake Yi Fei's confidence and make him panic as if he was about to be abandoned by the great shaman. Unfortunately, Yi Fei already knew about Chen Liang's scheme. At this moment, when he saw the tense atmosphere that Chen Liang deliberately created, Yi Fei only sneered and suppressed anger in his heart. However, when he entered the Roland's Golden Palace, Yi Fei still forced himself to show a terrified expression. This expression made Chen Liang very satisfied. After all, the more terrified Yi Fei was, the easier it would be for him to realize his scheme against Yi Fei. Looking at Yi Fei, Chen Liang's expression became very amiable for the first time. "So, Shangjiu, have you thought it through? Are you staying or leaving?" Yi Fei's face was bitter as he said, "Now, do I have any other choice? If I leave Roland's Golden Palace, Jin Shi will never let me go. If I stay in Roland's Golden Palace and pledge my loyalty to Teacher, I still have a chance to break through to the level of Sorcerer God and take revenge on Jin Shi. Teacher, I've thought it through. I'm willing to pledge my loyalty to Teacher forever. But Shifu, you have to swear that you will help me break into the Supreme Magus level." "Haha, I thought it was nothing. You are my disciple. As long as you swear the ancestral sorcerer oath that you will never betray me, I will do my best to help you become the Sorcerer God." I Chunliang can swear. Boom. In order to dispel Yi Fei's doubts, Chunliang ignited his own golden treasures and made the most solemn ancestor Magus oath with his spiritual power. I, Chunliang, swear that if Shangjiu sincerely follows me and never betrays me, I, Chunliang, will do my best to help Shangjiu break into the supreme Magus level. The sorcerer god's oath quickly alerted the ancestral sorcerer power that existed between the heavens and the earth. At the end of the void, a pair of special ancestral sorcerer eyes landed on Chunliang, causing him to become much more imposing. He was like a kind teacher. Then, Chunliang stared at Yi Fei with a strange look in his eyes. Yi Fei's scalp went numb. At this point, there was no way for him to shirk. He could only raise his hand in fear and burn his own golden treasures as he said, I swear that if great sovereign Chunliang can really help me break into the supreme Magus level, I will not only acknowledge you as my only teacher, but I will also pledge my loyalty to you forever. Teacher, I will never betray you. Heaven and earth are my witnesses, and the ancestral gods are my witnesses. Boom! When Yi Fei swore loudly, a terrifying spiritual power appeared in his body. At the same time, a terrifying mind ripple was transmitted, triggering the ancestral wizard power that existed in the unseen world. Similarly, an ancestral wizard eye stared at Yi Fei's body. It meant that Yi Fei's oath was valid. For the first time, Chunliang was so excited that his whole body trembled. He stared at Yi Fei as if he had discovered a rare treasure. He put his hands on Yi Fei's shoulders and said fervently, Good, good. Shangjiu, I was right about you as my disciple. Don't worry, only you will not let me down. I will never let you down. What are you talking about, master? I am your disciple, so I will naturally be filial to you forever. Yi Fei showed a very bright and simple smile. This made Chunliang sigh with emotion. This child is a good and honest child. If he didn't happen to be a battle sorcerer and have the golden treasures, it would be a good thing to take in such a disciple. However, for my plan of breaking through to the celestial master level, he had to suffer. This child. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes, but on the surface, Chunliang pretended to be amiable. He said in a deep voice, Shangjiu, since you and I have resolved our differences, there is no time to lose. I will take you to the ancestral god palace to get the celestial master's origin. Remember, you only have half a year to cultivate in the palace, so you must break through to the divine sorcerer level in half a year. Here, this is what I learned when I comprehended the origin and broke through to the divine sorcerer level. Take it and study it carefully. In order to help Yi Fei break through to the divine sorcerer level, Chunliang appeared to be even more nervous than Yi Fei himself. He took out the techniques of comprehending the celestial master's origin, which the divine sorcerer would never divulge. Then, he was worried that Yi Fei's cultivation time was too short. Even if he had the golden treasures, he might overuse his spiritual power and waste this precious half a year. Chunliang made up his mind and took out a golden crystal. He handed it to Yi Fei and said, This is the spiritual spring that I got from an ancient ruin. It is equivalent to the second golden treasure. It is the most precious treasure that I have. Take it with you. I look forward to the moment when you break through to the divine sorcerer level in half a year. Master. Yi Fei was completely shocked. Even though he knew that Chunliang did not have good intentions toward him, he had never imagined that Chunliang would be so willing to spare no expense, and even lend him his most precious ancient treasure. It was obvious how anxious Chunliang was for Yi Fei to break through to the divine sorcerer level. As Yi Fei received the spiritual spring happily, a shy and embarrassed expression appeared on his face. Seeing this expression, Chunliang was even happier. He secretly mocked Yi Fei's stupidity, but on the surface, he acted like a compassionate teacher. He grabbed Yi Fei's arm affectionately and said, Let's go. I will take you to see the most important divine temple of the sorcerer tribe. Boom. As Chen Liang waved his hand, a teleportation portal that he had prepared beforehand appeared in front of Yi Fei. When Yi Fei stepped through the teleportation portal, he realized that he had arrived in a very dark space. At the end of the space, there was a mysterious and majestic temple floating in the air. This temple was 10,000 times bigger than the divine temple of the sorcerer. It was like a floating continent, shining with a dazzling golden light at the end. Chapter 1890. Boom. As the 100,000 magic crystals were sacrificed, the ancestor god altar flashed with a mysterious light. The mountain-like palace doors of the ancestor god palace opened completely at this moment. Yi Fei suppressed his excitement and rushed through the palace doors as fast as he could. Chen Liang's face was full of love as he looked ahead. Only when Yi Fei's figure disappeared did Chen Liang's expression turn vicious and gloomy. Damn it, if Jean she hadn't broken through in advance, I wouldn't have suffered such a loss. Not only did I sacrifice 100,000 magic crystals, but I also gave Shangjiu my spiritual source, which is like my life. Shangjiu, if you still can't break through to the sorcerer god realm, I swear that I will torture you until you wish you were dead. You're neither human nor ghost. Obviously, the sacrifice of 100,000 magic crystals made a sorcerer god like Chen Liang feel extremely pained. If not for the fact that Yi Fei had already sworn that his life and death was in his hands, Chen Liang wouldn't have been willing to sacrifice so much. However, what Chen Liang didn't know was that just as Yi Fei rushed into the ancestor god palace and closed the palace doors, Gong Zhu had already rushed out of the beast mark space excitedly. Heavens, the ancestor god palace. I, Gong Zhu, actually have the chance to enter the ancestor god palace and obtain a heavenly venerate origin source. Big brother, from today onwards, you are my elder brother. Gong Zhu was so excited that his speech was incoherent. Yi Fei could understand Gong Zhu's feelings. After all, heavenly venerate origin source was extremely rare in this world. This was why only a small number of people were able to enter the supremacy realm. Under normal circumstances, even if Gong Zhu was Chen Liang's trusted aide, he wouldn't have the chance to enter the ancestor god palace in his lifetime. Thanks to Gong Zhu hiding on me, I was able to successfully swear a fake ancestral sorcerer oath and deceive the old fox Chen Liang. I hope that Chen Liang will be able to hold back his anger after discovering the truth, and not die from anger. Yi Fei looked at the spiritual source in his hand. He didn't stand on ceremony and destroyed the spiritual imprint within it on the spot. He had already refined this primordial treasure, which was equivalent to the second gold divine treasure, into his possession. In the void outside the palace, Chen Liang immediately sensed it. He was so angry that his hair was about to explode on the spot. He roared furiously, "Evil creature, how dare you do this? This sovereign only lent you the spirit spring for a while. You evil creature, you actually took it for yourself." Chen Liang was so furious that he had the urge to rush into the ancestral god palace and beat Yi Fei to death on the spot. However, he quickly suppressed the anger in his heart and forcefully comforted himself. Don't be angry. I can't be angry over a person who is about to die. Anyway, that Shangjiu has already sworn the ancestral which oath that he will never die. If he betrays me, even if he has refined the spirit source, I can make him spit it out with interest at any time. As expected, Grand Monarch Chen Liang calmed down and sat cross-legged in midair again like an old monk meditating, trying to adjust himself to the best state. He was waiting for Yi Fei to break through to the supreme magus level in half a year, so that he could devour Yi Fei's divine treasures and transform himself from a weak magus to the strongest battle magus. Inside the ancestral god palace, Yi Fei quickly finished refining the spirit source in his hand. With a thought, the spirit source immediately merged with his golden divine treasure. Yi Fei felt that under the effect of the spirit source, his golden divine treasure seemed to have doubled in size. The strength of his mind power had also doubled. This was equivalent to Yi Fei having 2 golden divine treasures in his body at the same time. This was also more beneficial to his comprehension. The heavenly venerate's origin could refine the laws of nature. As for the tips and techniques that Grand Monarch Chen Liang had painstakingly given to Yi Fei to comprehend the heavenly venerate's origin, Yi Fei didn't even look at them. Yi Fei grabbed Xiao Qiao, who was still lying on the immortal crystal bed, and refused to get up, out of the beast-mark space. Humph, no matter how much insight I have and how good my techniques are, they are still the difference between an ant and an elephant in front of Xiao Qiao. Xiao Qiao, come out and work. Squeak. Xiao Qiao was very disgruntled when he was dragged out and couldn't help burping. Evidently, Xiao Qiao hadn't had time to sleep and digest the mind power he had absorbed from the great Magus Gong Zhu with the spirit striking whip. However, when Xiao Qiao discovered that Yi Fei had entered another space filled with heavenly venerate origin, Xiao Qiao's eyes lit up. He immediately opened his heaven and earth spiritual eye and grabbed at the illusory heavenly venerate origin. These heavenly venerate origin were like air. They couldn't be seen or touched. Even if the witch god wanted to refine them, he would have to spend a lot of time comprehending them. Only Xiao Qiao was an exception. Xiao Qiao's heaven and earth spiritual eye could clearly see these heavenly venerate origin. Then, like catching fish in water, he grabbed the heavenly venerate origin that was hidden between heaven and earth. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Xiao Qiao's happy laughter came from Yi Fei's side. It didn't take long for Xiao Qiao to successfully grab a hidden heavenly venerate origin and roll around on the ground happily. However, before Xiao Qiao had a chance to taste it, a certain black tortoise had already leaned over and licked Xiao Qiao. At the same time, it bit off half of the heavenly venerate origin that Xiao Qiao was holding. Even so, the dragon turtle was still worried. It quickly took out the black vat and threw the heavenly venerate origin into it. Finally, the dragon turtle climbed into the black vat and set up layers of seals to hide inside. It was as if it was afraid that the heavenly venerate origin would disappear again. Yi Fei and Ling Siqi's faces instantly darkened. The great Magus Gong Zhu's face was full of heartache. What a shameless black pig! By the way, little miss, since you can't eat this half of the heavenly venerate origin, why don't you give it to me? Gong Zhu pulled a long face and pitifully leaned over to Xiao Qiao's side. He hated that he couldn't wag his tail like the dragon turtle. Seeing how pitiful Gong Zhu was, Xiao Qiao generously handed over the remaining half of the heavenly venerate origin. Gong Zhu was moved to tears. This little girl is still the best. It seems that not everyone in the human emperor palace is a bad person. After saying that, Gong Zhu smiled and held the half of the heavenly venerate origin. He also found a corner and began to refine it frantically. It felt like a vicious dog fighting for food. Yi Fei was puzzled. It's just a heavenly venerate origin. Do you have to be so excited? Xiao Qiao continued to grab it. This is not the human tribe's origin temple. We can grab as much as we want. There's no need to be polite with the sorcerer tribe. Xiao Qiao's eyes lit up when he heard that they could grab the heavenly venerate origin at will. After all, these heavenly venerate origins could also increase the power of Xiao Qiao's holy whip. Chapter 1891. 1 streak, 2 streaks, 3 streaks, 4 streaks, 10 streaks, 12 streaks. No energy could hide from Xiao Qiao's heaven and earth spirit eye. Soon, all the heavenly venerate origins in the ancestral god temple had been grabbed by Xiao Qiao. This made Yi Fei very puzzled. That's strange. Why are there only 12 streaks of heavenly venerate origins in the ancestral god temple? Xiao Qiao, are you sure you've grabbed all of them? Xiao Chao did not speak. Instead, he tilted his head and looked around. After observing for a while, he unhappily gestured to Yi Fei that Xiao Chao had already grabbed all the heavenly venerate origins. There was not a single one left. Yi Fei certainly did not doubt Xiao Chao's words. His mood instantly became very bad. It seems that the sorcerer tribe still has a backup plan. This ancestral god temple should have some special restrictions that limit the number of heavenly venerate origins that can appear at one time. After all, heavenly venerate origins were extremely rare in this world. If one could enter the ancestral god temple, they could easily comprehend and refine the heavenly venerate origins. As long as one was willing to spend some time, any sorcerer god could devour all the heavenly venerate origins here. Therefore, the sorcerer gods of the past had set some restrictions on the ancestral god temple. The ancestral god temple could only open 12 streaks of heavenly venerate origins at one time. If the ancestral god temple exceeded this limit, the ancestral god temple would hide the heavenly venerate origins. This was the same principle as the origin sacred hall of the human tribe, which could only be opened once every 500 years. This was to prevent the heavenly venerate origins from drying up and cutting off the future generations' path to becoming supremes. Little Guogua, 12 streaks it is. Let's hurry up and split these heavenly venerate origins. Ling Siki could not wait any longer. Her face was filled with the excitement of looting heavenly venerate origins for the first time. It was obvious that she was being led astray by Yi Fei. Yi Fei immediately broke out in a sweat. After some discussion, Xiao Chao happily hugged the 2 streaks of heavenly venerate origins and returned to the beast mark space. It was not that Yi Fei did not want to give him more, but Xiao Chao was still young and his appetite was limited. 1/3 of a heavenly venerate's origin was enough to feed Xiao Chao for half a year. At this moment, Xiao Chao was already very satisfied to be able to hug 2 celestial venerate origins at the same time and eat before sleeping. Ling Siki's situation was similar. In the end, Ling Siki was still just a demigod. It was already very difficult for her to refine one Empyrean origin source. Yet Yi Fei gave her 2. The little girl was so happy that she was jumping, screaming, and singing. She was chirping like a little bird. This scene made Grand Shaman Gongzhu's eyes redder than a rabbit's. If he had known earlier that Xiao Chao could capture so many celestial venerate origins, he wouldn't have swallowed his pride and only asked for half a celestial venerate origins. Seeing Gongzhu's red eyes filled with envy, Yi Fei thought about it and couldn't bear it in the end. He could only squeeze out half of the heavenly venerate origin and throw it over. Yi Fei finally threw the remaining half into the dragon turtle's huge black vat. In the end, Yi Fei hugged the remaining 6 heavenly venerate origins and sat down cross-legged on the ground to start refining them. Boom! As Yi Fei refined them, the undying sword soul in his body also let out an impatient cry. It seemed like it couldn't wait to devour all the heavenly venerate origins. Yi Fei was extremely depressed when he realized that the undying sword soul in his body was also a glutton for origins. Therefore, even though he had completely looted the ancestral god hall this time, Yi Fei still felt that the heavenly venerate origins were insufficient. However, the undying sword soul was his strongest trump card after all. Even if the heavenly venerate origins were insufficient, Yi Fei still gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He directly threw the 2 heavenly venerate origins into the vortex formed by the undying sword soul. Boom! After devouring the 2 heavenly venerate origins, Yi Fei clearly felt that the undying sword soul's aura had become even more violent. It even made him feel as if he couldn't control it. Yi Fei's expression changed instantly. He finally understood why the sword spirit in the sword soul had told him that he could only truly activate the undying sword soul when he reached the heavenly venerate level. Besides the heavenly venerate origins needed to break the seal on the sword soul, the most important thing was that the destructive power hidden in the undying sword soul was too terrifying. Yi Fei had only allowed the undying sword soul to devour 2 heavenly venerate origins, but the power of the undying sword soul had increased from 1/10,000th to 1/10,000th. The destructive power contained in the sword chi was also equivalent to an attack from an earthly venerate. Yi Fei was only a gold-rank Grand Magus at the moment. His martial arts realm was a pitiful demigod. With such a low martial arts realm, Yi Fei naturally felt that it was extremely difficult for him to control the strongest martial arts realm. Looks like the most important thing now is to quickly comprehend the precepts and break through to become a sorcerer god. Yi Fei understood. He no longer cared about the desire that the undying sword soul transmitted to him and forcefully suppressed the undying sword soul in his dantian. After that, Yi Fei also began to frantically refine the remaining 4 heavenly venerate origins in his hand. Time passed continuously as Yi Fei refined the heavenly venerate origins. Very quickly, 3 months had passed. 4 months had also passed. Soon it was the 5th month. Yi Fei, who was originally sitting cross-legged like a golden statue, suddenly had a terrifying roar coming from his body. Then, the 4 heavenly venerate origins that Yi Fei had refined all turned into extremely violent energy and surged wildly into the golden deity. Hidden within. Sorcerers were different from martial artists. In order for martial artists to break through to the next level, they needed a long period of cultivation and had to go through terrifying heavenly tribulations. Every step forward required them to go against the heavens and risk their lives to obtain the greatest power. On the other hand, sorcerers did not have souls, so their cultivation did not require them to go through heavenly tribulations. As long as the level of the deity's treasure reached a certain level, and they had mastered the corresponding level of sorcery, the sorcerer's level would naturally increase. This was the case for Yi Fei now. He already possessed the golden deity's treasure that was comparable to a sorcerer god's, and he also possessed the strongest battle sorcerer's path that Shang Jiu had passed down. Therefore, Yi Fei did not need to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of years like other sorcerers to condense the golden deity's treasure and cultivate 12 powerful sorcery techniques. As long as he had enough heavenly venerate origins and could comprehend the 4 precepts of heaven and earth, Yi Fei would naturally be able to break through to the 4th level of his battle sorcerer's body from the 3rd level. It would also allow the strength of his physical body to reach the level of a semi-venerable weapon from a divine weapon. A semi-venerable weapon was a battle sorcerer's body that was comparable to a human earthly venerate. It was also the key to allowing Yi Fei to break through to become a sorcerer god from a gold sorcerer. Therefore, when Yi Fei successfully comprehended the 4 precepts and integrated them into his body and stepped into the 4th level of his battle sorcerer's body, Yi Fei's level had officially advanced from a gold sorcerer to a sorcerer god. Just like Jin Shi, when Yi Fei stepped into the supreme venerate and broke through to become a sorcerer god, the entire world let out a violent roar. Chapter 1892. That's great. I've been waiting for this day for a chance to break through and become a celestial venerable. In the Archean Age, battle wizards were the strongest and were on par with the earthly venerables of the human race. Unfortunately, that old bastard, Dark Lord, destroyed our battle wizard sect and misled us into thinking that we could only cultivate the weak magic wizard and weapon wizard sect. We lost the chance to compete with the human and earthly venerables and fight against that old bastard, Dark Lord. But it doesn't matter. I, Chunliang, will revive the declining battle wizard sect. When I devour Shang Jiu and transform my body of sorcerer into the body of battle sorcerer, I, Chunliang, will lead the sorcerer tribe to reappear the glory of the ancient times and dominate this world. When that time comes, Dark Lord will kneel at my feet and repent. The more Chen Liang thought about it, the more excited he became. The ambition that had been suppressed in his chest for tens of thousands of years was completely aroused at this moment. If it weren't for the fact that Yi Fei still couldn't walk out of the ancestral god temple after half a year, Chen Liang couldn't wait to devour Yi Fei and completely possess Yi Fei's battle wizard body. Inside the ancestral god temple, Yi Fei could clearly feel the surging mind power in his body after breaking through to the wizard god level. If the golden treasure in his body was a vast ocean before he broke through to the wizard god level, then now, Yi Fei's golden treasure was a boundless starry sky. The wizard god's majestic mind power formed a terrifying nebula that whizzed and rotated behind Yi Fei. Then, it condensed into a special triangular star pattern that appeared between Yi Fei's eyebrows. This pattern was the symbol of Yi Fei breaking through to the wizard god level. Moreover, Yi Fei wasn't an ordinary wizard god but a powerful battle wizard. Unlike magic wizards and weapon wizards, who relied on the power of heaven and earth, battle wizards walked the most orthodox martial path and cultivated mind power martial art. A powerful battle wizard's combat power was definitely on par with the earthly venerables of the human race. However, I can't let my guard down. The reason why I was able to break through to the Supreme Magus level was because of the gold treasure left to me by Shang Jiao. I've only been cultivating for less than 100 years, while all the supreme powerhouses like the human gods and Empyrean gods are old monsters who have cultivated for tens of thousands of years. Even the sorcerer gods, who were slightly weaker than them, most of them have mastered many powerful god-level spells. Although these god-level shaman arts were not as powerful as earthly venerable arts, they were several times or even dozens of times stronger than immemorial heavenly arts. When he thought of this, Yi Fei's expression could not help but become much more solemn. Although breaking through to the wizard deity stage was very exciting, this was also the best opportunity for Chen Liang to kill and seize the battle wizard physique. If I don't want Chen Liang to succeed, I won't be able to defeat Chen Liang with only the ancient divine art. If I want to protect myself, I have to have the power to resist a god-level magic. A cold beam of light flashed across Yi Fei's eyes. Soon, he came up with a plan that wasn't really a plan. He did not have any god-level shaman arts, but he had the two supreme techniques, Dutian Phaseless Disaster and 8th-level Heavenly Dragon. Since the battle skills of the battle wizard and the ancient divine art of martial artists could be used together, then if he used his spiritual energy to perform these two supreme techniques, would he be able to unleash a power similar to a god-level shaman art? When he had this thought, Yi Fei could not help but fall into a frenzied state of cultivation. Like a martial arts fanatic, he laughed at times, frowned at times, muttered to himself at times, and strode forward at times. Ling Siki and the great shaman Gongzhu were stunned. Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle were used to it. They were not surprised that Yi Fei would fall into a frenzy when he cultivated. At this moment, Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle were very full. They lay on the ground laboriously, trying their best to refine the majestic power source in their bodies. More than 10 days had passed like this. Suddenly, Yi Fei stopped dancing like a madman. A terrifying spiritual wave began to appear on his body. Roar. Then, these spiritual waves evolved into 6 spiritual heavenly dragons under Yi Fei's control. At the same time, these heavenly dragons exuded a strong aura of laws. These 6 laws were the lightning law, slaughter law, mountain law, swamp law, water law, and fire law. As for Yi Fei's sword law, he could not integrate it into the 8th-level heavenly dragon due to their different attribute. Even so, when Yi Fei integrated the laws into this heavenly venerate technique, the power of the 8th-level heavenly dragon instantly rose from the level of an ancient divine art to that of a supreme technique. It's a pity that the 8th-level heavenly dragon can only be unleashed to its full power by using the primordial spirit. If I use my spiritual energy to activate it, I can only unleash 60% of the power of a supreme technique. I wonder how this power compares to the god-level shaman art cultivated by the sorcerer god? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Yi Fei could not resist the urge to find someone to try it out. He quickly thought of the best candidate, and that was great sovereign Chen Liang, who was still daydreaming outside the ancestral god palace. Chen Liang, since you harbor ill intentions towards me and intend to steal my battle shaman body, then I can only disregard our relationship as master and send you on your way. Gong Zhu, let's go. Ling Siki, protect Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle. This time, Yi Fei did not hide. Moreover, after breaking through to the sorcerer god level, he was already standing at the peak of this world. There was no need to hide at all. Boom! The door of the ancestral god palace was pushed open. Then Yi Fei strode out with the majestic aura of a sorcerer god. Chen Liang, who had been waiting anxiously for a long time, immediately felt Yi Fei's aura, which was far more powerful than that of an ordinary sorcerer god. He was even more ecstatic. When he saw Yi Fei, he shouted in a deep voice, "Shangjiu, you really did not disappoint me. Now, kneel on the ground immediately and open your golden treasure. I want to see your battle shaman's golden treasure." Standing at the door of the ancestral god palace and facing the hypocritical sorcerer god Chen Liang again, Yi Fei's face was only filled with coldness and disgust. "Chen Liang, who do you think you are? Do you think I'll kneel just because you ask me to? Why don't you kneel first? Since you helped me enter the ancestral god palace, I can spare your life." "Bastard, what did you say? If I hadn't spared no expense to send you into the ancestral god palace, you wouldn't have achieved what you have today. You bastard, you've just become a sorcerer god and haven't even learned a god-level sorcerer spell. How dare you betray your master and betray your ancestors? Shangjiu, don't forget that you swore an ancestral sorcerer oath to never betray me in your life. Don't even mention kneeling. Even if I ask you to lie on the ground and bark like a dog, you'll do it. Kneel before me now." Boom. Seeing that Yi Fei seemed to have grown up, Chen Liang was enraged. Without thinking, he directly invoked the ancestral sorcerer oath that Yi Fei had once swore to make Yi Fei kneel on the ground and submit. Yi Fei's expression didn't change. He only looked at Chen Liang mockingly. At the same time, behind him, Gong Zhu, Ling Siki, Xiao Qiao, and the dragon turtle were all looking at Chen Liang with strange expressions. During this time, Chen Liang had used all his strength to invoke the ancestral sorcerer oath several times in a row in an attempt to control Yi Fei. However, Yi Fei hadn't been punished by the ancestral sorcerer oath at all. It was only then that Chen Liang realized that the ancestral sorcerer oath that Yi Fei had swore was fake, and he had been completely fooled. This made Chen Liang, who prided himself on being resourceful, turn livid. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1893. The more Chen Liang spoke, the angrier he became. He was so angry that he coughed up blood continuously. Enraged, Grand Monarch Chen Liang morphed into a flaming stone golem king. He extended his enormous stone finger, which shot out a beam of star-like finger light that pierced through the void and landed on Yi Fei. Sorcery, star finger. Boom. The starry light condensed by the stone finger was so fast that Yi Fei couldn't dodge in time. His body was completely engulfed by the light of the sorcery. Only now did Chen Liang feel a little better. However, when he thought about how much he had to pay in order to help Yi Fei break through to the sorcerer god level, he realized that he had almost paid a huge price. Yi Fei had successfully fooled him with a fake sorcerer oath. Chen Liang was suddenly furious, as if his dignity had been insulted. "Shangjiu, if I don't skin you alive and grind your bones to dust today, I won't be called Chen Liang." Bang! The stone light that filled the sky suddenly scattered in all directions. A ferocious figure slowly walked out of the void that Chen Liang's stone finger had pierced through. Yi Fei's entire body emitted strong spiritual fluctuations, as if he was wearing a layer of special armor. This was the terror of a battle sorcerer. His physical body was comparable to a pseudo-venerable artifact, so Yi Fei's physical defense at the supremacy level was extremely strong. Unless Chen Liang had the strength to pierce through a pseudo-venerable artifact with a single blow, Chen Liang wouldn't be able to kill Yi Fei instantly. Sorcery is just so. Chen Liang, haven't you always wanted to devour my golden treasure and become a battle sorcerer? Now I'll fulfill your wish and let you know the terror of a battle sorcerer. Dazzling golden fist light suddenly erupted from Yi Fei's hands. It devoured the void, shattered the stars, and continuously punched through the void toward Chen Liang's body. Chen Liang was greatly shocked. How did you know that I wanted to steal your battle shaman body? Gong Zhu, was it you who helped him enter the Roland's Golden Palace? You actually dared to betray me. Why did I choose a bootlicker like you back then? Chen Liang was, after all, a commoner magus. He was a peerless magus who had walked step by step to become a sorcerer god. Through the clues, he recalled that Gong Zhu had once caused a ruckus outside the Roland Palace. Chen Liang finally realized that Yi Fei must have snuck into his Roland Palace and discovered the secret of the immemorial scroll. And the person who covered Yi Fei's entrance was definitely the worker. Grand Venerate Chen Liang was so enraged that he extended a stone finger and jabbed it at Zhu Gong, intending to kill the traitor right away. After discovering Chen Liang's intentions, Yi Fei sneered. Using the Parish God combat skill was just a trick he used to confuse Chen Liang. Seeing that Chen Liang had fallen for it, he even diverted his attention to deal with Zhu Gong. Yi Fei growled and finally stopped hiding. The golden fist radiance that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. At the same time, the 6 terrifying heavenly law dragons roared and pounced forward. Chen Liang's face immediately revealed a look of extreme shock. That's impossible. I've investigated. The battle sorcerer Dao that Shang Jiu obtained in the end was incomplete. There was no battle sorcerer divine combat skill in it. How could you have learned a divine combat skill? As he spoke, Chen Liang's hands suddenly turned into huge stone palms. He pushed them forward, and a huge crystal appeared in front of him. It formed a mirror image and caused Yi Fei's heavenly law dragons to stagnate, unable to move. Yi Fei couldn't help but be shocked. He shouted in a low voice, "You sorcerer gods really can't be underestimated. If you hadn't harbored evil intentions towards me, I really wouldn't have wanted to be your enemy. Kill, Dutian phaseless tribulation." Seeing that his heavenly law dragons were being suppressed, Yi Fei didn't hesitate. He used the 8-level heavenly dragons and the Dutian phaseless tribulation. The Dutian phaseless tribulation. The terrifying finger radiance carried with it a terrifying divine light that could destroy the world. It pierced through the void and also through the mirror in front of him. Even more shocked, Grand Monarch Chen Liang suddenly roared at Yi Fei, "Damn it, you're not using a battle skill, but the Dutian phaseless tribulation finger. Who the hell are you? Show me your true face." Whoosh! Grand Monarch Chen Liang completely opened his golden treasure trove. Terrifying spiritual fluctuations tore through the void like the sharp claws of a monster and viciously grabbed at Yi Fei. Yi Fei's exposed martial arts finally made Grand Monarch Chen Liang suspect Yi Fei's identity. At the same time, as a veteran sorcerer god, Grand Monarch Chen Liang's god-grade sorcerer spells were each more terrifying than the last. When these sorcerer spells were cast consecutively, the void showed signs of collapsing. With a final boom, the void finally couldn't withstand the pressure of the sorcerer god and shattered layer by layer like a block of ice. At this moment, Yi Fei stood in the middle of the shattered void and stared coldly at Grand Monarch Chen Liang. "Who am I? I'm the new emperor you're looking for. Chen Liang, didn't you collude with the heavenly gods to kill me? I'm standing right in front of you now. Let's see how you're going to kill me. Boom. He allowed the terrifying spiritual claws to tear at his body. His body, which was comparable to a pseudo-venerable artifact, perfectly blocked the attack of the God-grade sorcerer spell. At the same time, the moment Yi Fei revealed his identity, he had already taken the bombardment of Chun Liang's sorcerer's spell head-on. He used the Great Void technique and rushed from thousands of meters away to less than 10 meters away from Chun Liang. Chun Liang felt a chill run down his spine. His expression changed drastically as he shouted, "Sorcerer's spell! Freeze, restrict, trap, destroy." This was the sorcerer's spell. It used words to activate the power of heaven and earth to restrict the enemy's movements, seal the enemy's cultivation, bind the enemy's hands and feet, and destroy the enemy's spirit. As a veteran sorcerer god who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years, Grand Monarch Chun Liang had used this god-grade sorcerer spell to perfection. Even a sorcerer god of the same level would be restricted and immobilized by this sorcerer spell. Unfortunately, Yi Fei didn't walk the path of an ordinary sorcerer god. Instead, he walked the path of a battle sorcerer, which was comparable to the martial Tao. Although Grand Monarch Chun Liang had sealed his spirit and divine treasures, Yi Fei had already broken free of the sorcerer's spell's power like a violent dragon with his body, which was comparable to a pseudo-venerable artifact. His sorcerer's spell was shattered. Then, Yi Fei used the Peerless Heaven Tribulation in one hand and the 8th-level Heavenly Dragon in the other. The two supreme cultivation techniques burst forth at the same time. His majestic spirit power suppressed Grand Monarch Chun Liang like a raging furnace. "Damn it, you're a human. How dare you sneak into the sorcerer tribe and cultivate to become a sorcerer god? I hate you so much. Shameless human emperor, I'm going to kill you today." Chun Liang spat out a large amount of essence blood in anger. His entire body suddenly grew 10 times larger. He looked like the huge stone statue Yi Fei had seen in the river of time and space. His huge palms were like two terrifying millstones that could obliterate heaven and earth. They smashed Yi Fei's heavenly dragon of laws and the peerless heaven tribulation finger into pieces. "Humph, so what if you've become a sorcerer god? When I dominated the world, you were still wetting your bed. You're too lazy to fight me, human emperor." Chun Liang sneered. It wasn't enough for him to smash the heavenly dragon of laws and the peerless heaven tribulation finger. Taking advantage of the fact that Yi Fei's martial arts had been broken and he couldn't reform them in a short time, Chun Liang suddenly roared. His huge body grew even larger and he slammed it toward Yi Fei with murderous intent. Yi Fei's face also broke into a victorious smile. "Chun Liang, you're wrong. It's not that I'm too inexperienced, it's that you're too old. Undying Sword Soul, kill him." Boom. Yi Fei's 8th-level Heavenly Dragon and the Peerless Heaven Tribulation Finger were still feints. After all, these two supreme cultivation techniques couldn't display their true power without the use of true yuan. Therefore, Yi Fei's strongest move was the hidden Undying Sword Soul. Even if the Undying Sword Soul could unleash 1,000th of its power, it was still very terrifying. It was equivalent to an attack from an earthly venerate. An earthly venerate was already several times stronger than a sorcerer god. Now that Yi Fei had suddenly given up on his martial arts and unleashed an attack that was comparable to an earthly venerate, Chun Liang was instantly caught off guard. A terrifying ray of destructive light instantly pierced through Chun Liang's raised palms. It quickly pierced through the sorcerer god symbol on Chun Liang's forehead. Finally, the destructive sword light pierced through Chun Liang's head and destroyed the void behind him. Chapter 1894. The Venerable One is Dead. Seeing Chun Liang's huge headless stone statue floating in the void, Gong Zhu was the most shocked. He had followed Chen Liang for a long time and knew how terrifying the sorcerer god was. Even Jean, she was no match for Chen Liang when he had just broken through to the sorcerer god level. In the end, he could only retreat with hatred in his heart. Therefore, when he saw Yi Fei kill Chen Liang in a few dozen moves, Gong Zhu was even more shocked. There was also a terrifying thought that even he could not believe. How can a battle sorcerer be so powerful? Could it be that the most powerful sorcerer sect is actually the battle sorcerer sect that was looked down upon the most? Yi Fei's eyes lit up. He glanced at Gong Zhu and said in a low voice, "Gong Zhu, you're right. The most powerful sorcerer sect is the battle sorcerer sect." As he spoke, Yi Fei's body swayed. Majestic spiritual waves once again filled the entire starry sky and imprisoned the huge headless stone statue in front of him. Gong Zhu was shocked once again. With his eyesight as a gold great wizard, he could naturally tell that Yi Fei had used up all of his strength to kill Chen Liang with his sword. Logically speaking, even if Yi Fei had become a sorcerer god, he should have been completely exhausted. This was all thanks to Yi Fei refining the spiritual spring that Chen Liang had given him. The spiritual spring was equivalent to a second gold divine treasure. It was also Chen Liang's most precious treasure. In the end, Yi Fei had refined it and taken it for himself. Not only did he have a physical body that was comparable to a half-venerable weapon, but he also had spiritual power that was twice as strong as other sorcerer gods. If Chen Liang knew about this in the underworld, he would probably die of anger again. Therefore, even though Yi Fei had used all the power of the gold divine treasure to activate the indestructible sword soul, he was still full of energy due to the existence of the spiritual spring. At this moment, his spiritual power completely enveloped the stone statue that Chen Liang had died in battle. With a boom, the sturdy stone statue of the sorcerer god collapsed completely. It turned into dust. Then, a beating heart that looked like gold fell into Yi Fei's hands. This was the gold divine treasure that belonged to a sorcerer's sect, and it was a supreme Magus-level gold treasure. When Gong Zhu saw the divine treasure, his face suddenly showed a crazy look of ecstasy. At this time, he suddenly knelt down in the air and kowtowed to Yi Fei desperately. "Big brother, no, great sage, master, Gong Zhu begs master to have mercy on me and give me the golden divine treasure. I swear that I will be loyal to master and the human sovereign palace for all eternity. I will never betray." Boom! The ancestral Magus sensed that a mysterious heaven and earth altar appeared at the end of the void once more. Within the vortex of the altar, a ghastly eye of the ancestral Magus appeared and stared at Zhu Gong, representing the establishment of Zhu Gong's oath. Yi Fei was also very surprised as he looked at Gong Zhu. He didn't expect Gong Zhu to be so ruthless towards himself. If Gong Zhu still had a way out after swearing the blood oath, then after swearing this oath, Gong Zhu had no way to go back. But after swearing this oath, which was equivalent to unconditional loyalty, Gong Zhu had no way of going back. However, Yi Fei did not reject Gong Zhu's complete loyalty. After all, the war between the human tribe and the sorcerer tribe could not continue forever. At this time, if he could instigate a supreme Magus in the sorcerer tribe to become a traitor, then it would be very beneficial for ending the war between the human tribe and the sorcerer tribe and eliminating the Dark Lord behind the scenes. Besides, other than Gong Zhu, Yi Fei could not think of anyone else to give this gold divine treasure to. After all, the gold divine treasure was only useful to sorcerers. After thinking about it, he could only give it to Gong Zhu. When he handed over the gold divine treasure, Yi Fei's expression suddenly became gloomy. "Gong Zhu, listen carefully. I can accept your loyalty and help you become a supreme Magus. But if I know that you dare to target the human tribe and kill the innocent, I will give you whatever I can give you. Master, don't worry. Gong Zhu promises that I will never kill a single human tribe member in the future." Gong Zhu threw caution to the wind. After all, becoming a supreme magus was the lifelong pursuit of all sorcerers. Gong Zhu did not want to give up this opportunity no matter the price. Only then did Yi Fei nod his head in satisfaction. He helped Gong Zhu up and said, "If you don't betray me, I won't betray you. Gong Zhu, from today onwards, you and I will still be brothers. I'm the big brother and you're the second brother." "Thank you, big brother." Gong Zhu choked with sobs. Originally, he had made a vicious oath and decided to be a servant. In the end, Yi Fei still treated him as a brother and gave him the greatest amount of respect. Gong Zhu suddenly felt that following Yi Fei was a very good thing. Then, Gong Zhu suddenly thought of something and his expression changed. "Big brother, this is bad. Many great sorcerers in the Roland's palace have signed an oath of loyalty with me. Now that I'm dead, they must have sensed it. Damn, why didn't you say so earlier?" Yi Fei was very depressed. He had no choice but to kill Chen Liang. However, he had to keep the Roland's palace safe. Yi Fei did not want to expose his identity and be hunted down by the other supreme magi. Most importantly, Yi Fei still planned to use Chen Liang's Roland's palace to continue the marriage alliance with the supreme magi and take the opportunity to rescue Zhao Yu and Lu Qing. Immediately, Yi Fei waved his hand and grabbed Gong Zhu. At the same time, he tore open the boundless void in front of him with one hand. Xiao Chao, Dragon Turtle, and Ling Siki also hurriedly returned to the beast mark space. Fortunately, although Supreme Magus Chen Liang was dead, the transmission stone door he left behind was still operating. Yi Fei stepped through the stone door and instantly appeared in the Roland's palace. At this time, the Roland's palace was in chaos, just as Gong Zhu had expected. After all, every supreme magus would have some absolutely trusted subordinate. These subordinates had sworn an oath of loyalty to a supreme magus. Once the supreme magus they were loyal to died in battle, and the oath of the supreme magus was lifted, they would definitely sense something. When Yi Fei appeared in the palace, there were about a dozen gold-rank magi gathered in the palace. These gold-rank magi were absolutely trusted subordinates of Chen Liang. At this time, they were gathered around the stone door and discussing the matter of the vow of the supreme magus being lifted. When they suddenly saw Yi Fei and Gong Zhu appear at the same time, these gold great shamans were shocked. Then, two furious roars came from the two great shamans who were guarding the Roland's golden palace. Wu Yi was one of Chen Liang's trusted aides, who could be used to guard the Roland's golden palace. When they saw that Chen Liang had entered the stone door with Yi Fei and headed to the ancestral god palace, but it was Yi Fei and Gong Zhu who came out, they shouted angrily, "Gong Zhu, why are you here? Shangjiu, what happened to the supreme magus? Did you do something to the supreme magus? You know what Chen Liang did to me. Now, I can tell you with certainty that Chen Liang wanted to harm me and has been killed by me. From now on, I will be in charge of this Roland's palace. There are only two paths left for you. You can either submit or die." Since he couldn't hide it, Yi Fei didn't hide it anymore. Moreover, they were in the enemy's camp. He had to be decisive. If he hesitated, it would only spoil the plan. His words instantly enraged the dozen or so gold-ranked great shamans. "Shangjiu **T. Who do you think you are? You are just a pig reared by the supreme magus. Do you think you have the ability to kill the supreme magus? Hurry up and get down from the throne. Tell us honestly what happened to the supreme magus." Chapter 1895. Boom. None of the gold wizards present had expected that Gong Zhu would be the first to attack instead of Yi Fei. Their faces were filled with shock. Is this bootlicker Gong Zhu crazy? He's just the weakest among us. How dare he betray the great sage and attack us? Humph, listen to what he said just now. Ninth great sage Shang, what a joke. Since Gong Zhu wants to die, we'll fulfill his wish. Those who could become Gong Zhu's trusted aides were undoubtedly the best among the gold wizards, especially the two who were guarding the palace gate. They had the battle prowess of an upper-level martial god. Half a year ago, they had joined forces to pin Gong Zhu to the ground and beat him up for 10 days. At this moment, seeing that Gong Zhu actually did not know what was good for him and came forward to be tortured again, they all laughed sinisterly and joined hands to attack him again. Merely, this time around, they were no longer planning to beat Gong Zhu to a pulp. Instead, they decided to directly beat this traitor to death on the spot. Seeing the two of them attacking, the other gold wizards all laughed sinisterly and rushed toward Yi Fei. "Shangjiu, you'd better not resist. Otherwise, with so many of us, we might beat you to death if we're not careful." Yi Fei couldn't help but smile and said in a deep voice, "Beat me to death? How arrogant! I'll just stand here and let you beat me." Facing these gold wizards, Yi Fei didn't attack. He just put his hands behind his back and let the countless sorcery spells drown him. As for the gold wizards who were attacking Yi Fei, they all looked at Yi Fei in shock and fear. What did they see? Under the joint attack of more than 10 gold wizards, Yi Fei didn't move at all and wasn't injured at all. How is this possible? Even if he's a battle wizard, how can he withstand the sorcery spells of so many of us by himself? Unless he's a sorcerer god like the great sage. Finally, a gold wizard remembered how Gong Zhu addressed Yi Fei. At first, they took it as a joke and didn't take it to heart. It wasn't until they attacked Yi Fei that they realized in shock that the young man standing in front of them was brimming with energy. He was so similar to a sorcerer god. They were very similar. No, strictly speaking, the pressure that Yi Fei was exuding right now was even more terrifying than that of an ordinary sorcerer god. After all, Yi Fei was the most powerful battle shaman. Sorcerer god, he is the sorcerer god. Boom! These gold shamans attacked quickly, but they retreated even faster. There were also a few smart ones who tried to escape from Roland's golden palace. However, before they could escape, Yi Fei had already attacked coldly. Do Tian phaseless tribulation carried a destructive finger light as it pierced through the foreheads of 2 gold shamans. "Surrender or die." Yi Fei looked at these great shamans and said in a deep voice, "I'll give you 3 breaths. If I kill all of you, there will still be other gold great shamans who will pledge their loyalty to me." Yi Fei tried his best to imitate Shang Jiu's expression and actions, and there was a hint of madness and killing intent in his gloominess. Sensing Yi Fei's killing intent, the faces of the remaining 9 gold great wizards turned ghastly pale. It had not been easy for them to become gold great wizards and become existences comparable to gods in this world. However, no one was willing to die just like that. These gold great wizards were no exception. I surrender. 9th Venerable Shang, please spare our lives. We were wrong." The 2 gold great wizards with the weakest willpower knelt down in front of Yi Fei on the spot to show their allegiance. With one of them taking the lead, the other 7 gold great wizards also knelt down in fear. Bang! At the same time they knelt down, 2 loud explosions suddenly came from the golden palace not far away. Gong Zhu had miraculously killed the 2 golden great shamans, who were comparable to upper martial gods, in a 1 versus 2 situation. How is this possible? All the gold shamans who were still alive had an extremely shocked expression on their faces. After all, half a year ago, Gong Zhu was still pressed to the ground and beaten by these 2 people. How is this not possible? Gong Zhu has already entered the ancestral god palace and obtained the heavenly venerate's origin. I also gave the golden divine treasure that I obtained from killing Qin Liang to Gong Zhu. If he still can't defeat me, he should find a piece of tofu and kill himself," Yi Fei said coldly. Upon hearing Yi Fei's words and seeing the proud and high-spirited Gong Zhu, one of the gold great wizards suddenly came to his senses and immediately swore with red eyes. 9th Venerable Shang, I am willing to swear that I will be loyal to you for life. If I go against my words, let my divine treasure collapse and I die. 9th Venerable Shang, I have eyes but failed to recognize your greatness. You must accept me. Venerable Shang, I am much more useful than that bootlicker Gong Zhu. I am willing to be loyal to you for life. With Gong Zhu as an example, these gold great wizards who wanted nothing more than to break through to the wizard deity level all fought to show their loyalty to Yi Fei. Yi Fei did not stop these gold great wizards from swearing their loyalty. After all, he also needed his own strength in the sorcerer tribe. However, this did not mean that Yi Fei would nurture these people like how he nurtured Gong Zhu. He did not have the time nor the energy to do so. Seeing that the biggest hidden danger in Roland's Golden Palace had been eliminated, Yi Fei did not continue to stay. He directly pushed the high throne away and said, Gong Zhu, I will leave these people to you. Remember, I do not wish for any internal strife to occur in Roland's Golden Palace. As for those gold great wizards who did not sign the ancestral wizard's oath, I will leave them to you. Once again, he walked into Chunliang's real Roland's Golden Palace. This scene also made the other gold great wizards extremely shocked. Obviously, even these former confidants did not know that Chunliang was hiding a Roland's Golden Palace. Then, Gong Zhu became agitated. He understood that Yi Fei's order was not without a test. Gong Zhu immediately used 120% of his energy and shouted at the gold great wizards, Everyone, did you not hear Venerable Shang's order? Immediately take action and pacify the other great wizards in Roland's Golden Palace. If any turmoil in Roland's Golden Palace attracts the attention of the other wizard deities, there is no need for Venerable Shang to take action. I, Gong Zhu, will tear you apart. Walking into this hidden Roland's Golden Palace again, Yi Fei could not help but be shocked by its luxurious appearance. Then, he saw that there were many fewer spirit dragons in the Roland's Golden Palace. Obviously, most of the spirit dragons had been refined into magic crystals by Venerable Chun Liang and sacrificed when he opened the ancestral God Palace. However, the remaining magic crystals still made the entire Roland's Golden Palace look dazzling. It also made Xiao Chao pull the dragon turtle's tail and run out, pouncing on those spirit dragons. Of course, Xiao Chao was purely grabbing those spirit dragons to play with. The dragon turtle, on the other hand, was sneakily attacking those spirit dragons. Chapter 1896. The Archean scroll was still as heavy as a mountain. Even though Yi Fei had already broken through to the sorcerer god realm, it was still difficult for him to pick up this scroll. This made Yi Fei very depressed. He originally wanted to take this scroll with him, but now it seemed impossible for him to do so. That's true. If this scroll could be kept, Grand Sovereign Chun Liang would definitely carry it with him. He wouldn't have left it here and let me see it. If I want to keep this scroll, I'll have to have the strength of a heavenly venerable like the Archean sorcerers to erase the spiritual imprint on it. Yi Fei quickly gave up on the idea of taking away the primordial scroll and began to concentrate on comprehending the last third of the primordial scroll's contents. What surprised him was that the last part of the primordial scroll was actually a combat skill. This combat skill was called the Celestial Star Palm. The god-killing fist that Grand Sovereign Chun Liang had given Yi Fei was actually comprehended from this god-level combat skill. However, Grand Sovereign Chun Liang was a sorcerer and couldn't use combat skills. Therefore, Grand Sovereign Chun Liang had given the god-killing fist to Yi Fei as a test. I didn't expect that the god-killing fist was only a part of the Celestial Star Palm. Grand Sovereign Chun Liang had indeed left something behind. Fortunately, I've broken through to the sorcerer god level and can finally master this god level combat skill. Yi Fei was very excited. Combat skills were different from sorcery. Even if sorcery reached the god level, it was still weaker than ordinary earthly venerable cultivation technique. However, combat skills were actually spiritual martial arts. As long as I can master this god-level combat skill, I'll truly have the ability to contend with heavenly gods and mortal gods. I won't just rely on the power of the undying sword soul. After all, no matter how strong the undying sword soul was, it could only be used once. On the other hand, god-level combat skills could be used countless times as long as one had enough mind power. After completely comprehending the celestial star palm, Yi Fei's expression was full of excitement. After transmitting to Gong Zhu that he was going to cultivate in seclusion, Yi Fei threw all matters of the Roland's Golden Palace to the back of his mind. He was only in the spiritual space, repeatedly deducing the new god-level combat skill, striving to master it as soon as possible. He had mastered it. Xiao Chao and Ling Siki were speechless when they saw that they had to go into seclusion again after coming out of seclusion in the ancestral god palace. Little Guogua is too boring. Xiao Chao, why don't you take Long Gui with you and follow me? Don't worry, I'll take good care of you and Long Gui. Ling Siki was young but mischievous. She began to try her best to poach Yi Fei again. This little girl really liked the dragon turtle and Xiao Chao. This was also the reason why she kept clinging on to Yi Fei. The little girl had already made up her mind to take Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle away. If she really couldn't take them away, then there was nothing she could do. Then she had no choice but to suffer a little and work hard to marry Yi Fei. Home. Of course, if Yi Fei knew that Ling Siki had such thoughts, he would definitely reject her. Xiao Chao looked at Ling Siki strangely. He also firmly rejected Ling Siki's unreasonable request. On the other hand, Long Gui was busy eating. He was so busy that he didn't even have time to make a sound. However, as he ate, Long Gui suddenly felt that something was wrong. Boom! A pitch-black hole suddenly appeared in the dome of the Roland's palace. The hole rapidly expanded and a mysterious void appeared. At the end of the void, purple lightning was rolling like lava. It rumbled and surged out from the end of the void. Its target was Long Gui, who was still eating magic crystals. Heavenly tribulation. Long Gui seems to be breaking through to martial emperor. Ling Siki and Xiao Chao looked at Long Gui in surprise. They didn't expect Long Gui to attract a martial emperor heavenly tribulation just by eating magic crystals. Of course, strictly speaking, Long Gui didn't attract a martial path heavenly tribulation but a demon path heavenly tribulation. After all, Long Gui walked the demon path. Although the demon path was similar to the battle shaman path and would eventually lead to the martial path, there were still differences in the demon path. For example, when Long Gui was in the martial royal realm, he was equivalent to a little monster king. However, when he reached the martial emperor realm, Long Gui would become a great monster saint. Currently, Long Gui was going through the monster saint tribulation. Roar! Heavenly tribulation? Never in its wildest dreams would the dragon turtle have imagined that it would trigger a heavenly tribulation just by eating Dharma crystals. The dragon turtle was so frightened that its black mouth turned white at a speed visible to the naked eye. Before the heavenly tribulation descended, the dragon turtle rushed to Ling Siki's side with a whoosh. Then, a terrifying purple-black lightning formed a huge light pillar. At the same time, it enveloped Ling Siki, Long Gui, and Xiao Chao. Long Gui was charred on the spot. Long Gui opened his black mouth, and black smoke came out of it. Xiao Chao's face darkened. Black smoke also came out of Ling Siki's head. Then, the two girls flew into a rage out of humiliation. They kicked Long Gui like a ball and threw it to Yi Fei. Boom! At the same time, Long Gui's second monster Saint Tribulation landed. Since Long Gui had already flown to Yi Fei's side, the heavenly tribulation also targeted Yi Fei. A purple-black lightning bolt that was 10 times bigger than Long Gui's black jar landed on top of Yi Fei and Long Gui's heads. Yi Fei suddenly had the urge to kick Long Gui away. Of all times, Long Gui had to face the heavenly tribulation now. Fortunately, they were in the Roland's Golden Palace. Chunliang had set up various powerful magus restrictions. If Long Gui had accidentally attracted the heavenly tribulation outside, his identity would have been exposed. At the same time, Yi Fei was at the most critical moment in comprehending the celestial palm. Seeing Long Gui attract the heavenly tribulation, Yi Fei was annoyed. However, at the same time, he had an idea. Why don't I use Long Gui's heavenly tribulation to test the power of this divine battle technique? He acted as soon as he thought of it. When the purple-black lightning bolt landed, Yi Fei subconsciously performed the celestial palm that he had just comprehended. Yi Fei's majestic spiritual power formed a huge star palm. It grabbed the heavens and the earth and blasted toward the lightning bolt. Two great venerables, Chunliang's golden palace is in front of us. Inside Roland's golden palace, Yi Fei was busy helping Long Gui to face the heavenly tribulation. Outside Roland's golden palace, two large groups of people had arrived. One of the groups was holding a golden wolf-head war flag. They were surrounded by wolf-like golden sorcerers. They were the wolf cavalry of the Tianfeng tribe and the direct descendants of Jin Shi. Horses. The members of the other team were all wearing flaming battle robes. The person in the lead had hair that was burning fiercely like flames. If Yi Fei were here, he would recognize him at a glance. He was Grand Monarch Li Hua, who had clashed with him in the Dark Mystic Palace. Grand Venerable Li Hua was also Jin Shi's father-in-law. However, because Jin Shi had just broken through to the Supreme Magus realm, he despised Grand Venerable Li Hua for being old and weak and wanted to abandon his daughter. This made Grand Venerable Li Hua furious, and he wanted to fight Jin Shi on the battlefield. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.